in controlled chaos as they wheeled him in. Another car accident victim, another race against time. I pulled on my surgical gloves with practiced precision, my mind already mapping the Miss Elena Martinez, a neurosurgeon. My hands have saved hundreds of lives, but they trembled the moment I held the scalpel above the man who vanished from my life 6 years ago. Now lying unconscious. Miss Elena Martinez, a neurosurgeon. My hands have saved hundreds of lives, but they trembled the moment I held the scalpel above the man who vanished from my life 6 years ago. Now lying unconscious on my operating table, with a chip buried deep in his brain to erase every memory of us. And in that life or death moment, he whispered my name, Elena. Before I share my story, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you've ever overcome a family betrayal. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happens next. My hands have saved hundreds of lives, but they trembled the moment I saw his face. The trauma bay erupted in controlled chaos as they wheeled him in. Another car accident victim, another race against time. I pulled on my surgical gloves with practiced precision, my mind already mapping the procedure ahead. The nurse rattled off vitals while I studied the scans. Subdural hematoma, significant swelling, emergency craniotomy needed. Let's move, I commanded, leading the rush to OR3. Everything changed when they removed his oxygen mask. 6 years. 6 years since Marcus Chen vanished from my life, leaving nothing but a handwritten note that said, "I'm sorry," and an engagement ring I couldn't bring myself to sell. 6 years of wondering if he was dead or if he'd simply stopped loving me. And now he lay on my operating table, bleeding into his brain. "Dr. Martinez?" My resident's voice snapped me back. "Are you—" "I'm fine." The lie came automatically. I forced my breathing to steady, pushed down the scream building in my chest. Scalpel. The next 3 hours blurred into precise movements and medical terminology. I became a machine, cutting into the skull of the man I'd once planned to marry, removing the clot that threatened his life. My team never knew that beneath my steady hands, my heart was shattering all over again. When I finally closed, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. An old surgical scar hidden beneath his hairline, a scar I'd never seen before. "Excellent work, Dr. Martinez." My attending nodded approvingly. Though the patient was admitted as Michael Chase. No emergency contacts, no medical history. Strange. Michael Chase. Even his name was a lie. I should have walked away. Should have assigned another doctor to his care and pretended I'd never seen him. Instead, I found myself sitting beside his bed at 3 a.m., studying his unconscious face in the dim ICU light. The years had changed him. New lines around his eyes, a small scar on his chin, his black hair now touched with premature gray. But his hands, those gentle hands that used to trace patterns on my back while I fell asleep, remained exactly the same. "His belongings," a nurse whispered, handing me a clear plastic bag. "Security found these in his jacket." Inside, a wallet with the name Michael Chase, car keys, and something that made my pulse skip. A small USB drive with masking tape labeled, "For Elena the Truth, my name." After 6 years of silence, my name. I pocketed the drive before I could think better of it. Back in my office, I locked the door and plugged it into my laptop. A single video file appeared. Marcus's face filled the screen, younger, desperate, filming himself in what looked like a motel room. "Elena, if you're watching this, it means something's happened to me." His voice cracked. "I need you to know why I left. I witnessed a murder. A Nexus Pharma executive killing a whistleblower who was about to expose their illegal drug trials. They gave me two choices: disappear forever or watch everyone I love disappear instead. They showed me photos of you at the hospital, at your apartment, at your mother's house. I couldn't let them hurt you. I paused the video, my hands shaking so badly I knocked over my coffee. All those years I'd hated him for abandoning me, and he'd been trying to protect me. There's more, he continued when I pressed play. They did something to me. I can't remember exactly what, the memories are fuzzy, but I know they took me somewhere, did some kind of procedure. I have these gaps, these missing pieces. Elena, I loved you. I still love you. I'm so sorry. The video ended. I sat in the darkness of my office, tears streaming down my face, trying to reconcile the Marcus who left me with the Marcus who'd sacrificed everything to keep me safe. Marcus woke up 3 days later, and I watched from the doorway as he struggled to focus. His eyes, those warm brown eyes that used to look at me like I was his whole world, passed right over me without recognition. Where am I? He asked the nurse. Seattle Medical Center. You were in an accident. Do you remember your name? Michael Chase. My heart cracked a little more. Whatever they'd done to him, it ran deep. I was reviewing his charts at the nurse's station when she arrived. Blonde, polished, moving with a kind of confidence that suggested money and privilege. She rushed past me, designer heels clicking on the linoleum. Where is he? Where's my husband? The word hit me like a physical blow. Husband. Ma'am, I need you to check in at, the desk clerk began. Michael Chase? He was in a car accident. I'm Sarah Chase, his wife. She produced documents from her purse with shaking hands. Please, our daughter is in the car with my sister. She's terrified for her daddy. I forced myself to look at the papers she thrust at the clerk. Marriage certificate dated 3 years ago. Insurance cards. A family photo of Marcus, Michael, with his arm around this woman, a toddler on his hip, all of them smiling at the camera. 3 years. He'd built an entire life without me. Room 314, the clerk said, and Sarah rushed past me again, leaving a trail of expensive perfume. I made it to the bathroom before I threw up, then sat on the floor trying to breathe through the pain. The USB drive burned in my pocket. He'd said he loved me, but he'd married someone else, had a child with someone else. Maybe the procedure had erased more than just his memories. Maybe it had erased us. I avoided his room for the rest of my shift, but as I gathered my things to leave, I heard a small voice in the hallway. Daddy? A little girl, maybe 4 years old, with straight black hair and Marcus's exact nose, stood outside room 314. She clutched a teddy bear, tears streaming down her face. Hey, sweetheart. I knelt beside her. Are you lost? Want Daddy? She whimpered. But Mommy says he's sick. I helped her find Sarah, who scooped her up with practiced ease. Thank you, Doctor. Martinez, I managed. Something flickered in her eyes. Elena Martinez, the neurosurgeon? I nodded, and her smile sharpened. Michael's mentioned you, said you were brilliant. The lie was smooth, practiced. Marcus would never have mentioned me as Elena to his new family, which meant Sarah knew exactly who I was. I started watching them, not obviously, just passing by during the rounds, catching glimpses through the doorway. Sarah played the devoted wife perfectly, but something felt off. She touched Marcus constantly, as if reminding him she was there, but he seemed uncomfortable with her affection. And the little girl, Lily, was sweet but strangely formal with him, like she was following a script. My suspicions crystallized when I overheard Sarah on the phone in the family lounge. No, he doesn't remember anything substantial. Yes, I'm maintaining cover. The child, she's playing her part perfectly. I understand the timeline. I ducked into a supply closet before she could see me, my mind racing. Maintaining cover? Playing her part? That night, I did something unethical. I accessed the hospital lab and ran a paternity test using hair samples from Marcus and Lily. While waiting for results, I dug deeper into Sarah Chase's background. The woman was a ghost before 3 years ago. No social media history, no employment records, nothing. She'd appeared in Marcus's life exactly 6 months after he disappeared from mine. My phone buzzed with the lab results. Probability of paternity, 0%. Lily wasn't his daughter. I was processing this when my pager went off. Emergency in Marcus's room. I ran, finding him seizing violently while Sarah stood frozen in the corner. How long? I barked, pushing past her. 2 minutes, maybe 3. Get out. I didn't wait for her to leave before pushing medication into his IV. The seizure lasted another minute before finally subsiding, leaving Marcus unconscious and Sarah wringing her hands in the hallway. Will he be okay? I studied her carefully. These seizures? Has he had them before? No, never. But her eyes darted left, the classic tell of a liar. I need his complete medical history. The real one. She straightened, mask slipping. I don't know what you mean. I think you do. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. I know Lily isn't his. I know you didn't exist before 3 years ago. So let's skip the act. Who are you? And what did they do to him? For a moment, she looked almost relieved. Then her phone rang, and whatever openness I'd seen vanished. She answered without breaking eye contact with me. Yes, I understand. No, the doctor suspects nothing. She hung up and smiled coldly. You should be careful, Dr. Martinez. Some questions are dangerous to ask. The next morning, I found a note slipped under my office door. Your father knew. Lab 6, basement, midnight, come alone. My father had been dead for 5 years, killed in a fire that destroyed his research lab. The official cause was electrical malfunction, but I'd never believed it. He'd been working on something before he died, something he wouldn't discuss even with me. Lab 6 had been sealed since the fire. I used my override code, heart pounding as the door clicked open. The space was exactly as I remembered. Scattered papers, broken equipment, the ghost of smoke damage on the walls. Hello, mija. I spun around, nearly screaming. A man stepped from the shadows, thinner and older but unmistakably alive. Papa? The word came out broken, childish. I'm sorry, Elena. I'm so sorry. He pulled me into his arms, and I breathed in the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with laboratory chemicals. I had to disappear. They were going to kill you if I didn't. Nexus Pharma? He nodded, leading me to a hidden panel in the wall. Inside were files, hard drives, medical equipment I didn't recognize. I was developing a neural implant to treat Alzheimer's, he began. But Nexus stole my research, weaponized it. They created implants that could suppress memories, alter personality, even control behavior. When I tried to stop them, they targeted you, told me if I didn't disappear, they'd put one in your brain. My hand went unconsciously to my head. Did they? No, mija. I made sure of that. But Marcus, he pulled out a file with Marcus's photo. He witnessed them testing the technology on prisoners. They caught him, implanted him, tried to erase his memories. But the early versions were flawed. I managed to get to him first, performed surgery to partially disable the implant. That's the scar you found. You saved him? I tried, but the damage was already done. He remembered fragments, enough to know he loved you, enough to try to protect you, but not enough to come back whole. I sank onto a dusty stool, overwhelmed. And Sarah? CIA, part of a joint task force investigating Nexus. They placed her with Marcus to monitor him, make sure the implant stayed stable. The child is her niece, orphaned in an unrelated incident. They've been using them both. So everything, our entire lives, it's all been manipulation? Not everything. He took my hands. Marcus's love for you, that was real. So real that even their best technology couldn't erase it completely. The seizures he's having, that's his brain fighting the implant, trying to remember. Armed with my father's research, I knew I could remove Marcus's implant, but it was dangerous. The surgery could kill him, or worse, leave him brain damaged. And even if successful, the memories might not return. He could wake up a stranger who chose his fake life over our real one. I found him alone the next morning, Sarah mysteriously absent. He was staring out the window, looking lost. Good morning, Mr. Chase. How are you feeling? He turned, and for a moment, something flickered in his eyes. I know you. My heart stopped. I'm your doctor. No, I know you. He pressed his palms against his temples. Sometimes I see things. A woman with your face, laughing, dancing in a kitchen, crying in a wedding dress. But that's impossible because Marcus. His real name slipped out before I could stop it. His head snapped up. What did you call me? I made my choice then. Closing the door, I sat beside him and took his hand. A violation of every professional boundary, but I was past caring. Your name is Marcus Chen. You graduated from Harvard Medical School. You loved terrible action movies and perfect coffee. You asked me to marry you on a beach in Oregon during a thunderstorm because you couldn't wait for clear weather. My voice broke. And you left to protect me from people who wanted to hurt us both. He stared at our joined hands, his breathing shallow. Elena? Yeah, I whispered. It's me. But I have a wife, a daughter. I have a life. No. I pulled out my phone, showing him my father's files. You have an implant in your brain and a CIA handler pretending to be your wife. None of it is real. He yanked his hand away, stumbling out of bed. You're lying. You're confused. I need to call Sarah. The woman who reports on you daily? Whose daughter isn't even yours? Marcus, please. I can prove everything, but first, you have to trust me. Just for 1 minute, trust me like you used to. He stopped at the door, hand on the handle. When he turned back, tears were streaming down his face. The dreams, he said quietly. I dream about drowning, and you're the one who pulls me out. Every single time, it's you. My father and I worked through the night, preparing for the surgery. Sarah had vanished after a terse phone call, her handler pulling her out once they realized we knew the truth. She'd left Lily with a real social worker, the first honest thing she'd done. The implant is integrated with his hippocampus, Papa explained, showing me the scans. We have to be precise. One wrong move. I know. I'd already run through the procedure 100 times in my mind. I can do this. Marcus had agreed to the surgery after seeing the evidence, but I could see the terror in his eyes. He was choosing to trust me with not just his life, but his identity. What if I wake up and still don't remember, he asked the night before. Then we make new memories, I said simply. Better ones. The OR was silent except for the rhythmic beeping of monitors. My team didn't know they were helping me save the love of my life. To them, it was just another complex procedure. But my father stood in the observation deck, and that gave me strength. 4 hours. 4 hours of navigating neural pathways, of carefully extracting the foreign technology that had stolen 6 years from us. When I finally removed the implant, a thing no bigger than a grain of rice, I wanted to crush it between my fingers. Closing now, I announced, my voice steady despite my exhaustion. The next hours were the longest of my life. I sat by his bed, holding his hand, whispering stories of our past. I told him about our first date, how he'd been so nervous he had knocked over his wine, about the time we got food poisoning in Mexico and spent 3 days taking turns in the bathroom, laughing despite the misery, about the morning he proposed, how the rain had soaked us both, but he'd insisted on getting on one knee anyway. Elena? His voice was different, deeper, more certain. I looked up to find him watching me with eyes that truly saw me for the first time in 6 years. Hi, I breathed. Hi. He reached up, fingers trembling to touch my face. God, I missed you. I broke down then, sobbing against his chest while he held me with weak arms. He remembered. Not everything. There were still gaps, still confusion. But he remembered us. I'm sorry, he whispered into my hair. I'm so sorry I left. You were protecting me. I was a coward. I should have found another way. We both did what we thought was right. I pulled back to look at him. What matters is we're here now. Recovery wasn't like the movies. There were bad days when Marcus would forget where he was, when the gaps in his memory would frustrate him to tears. Days when I'd catch him looking at photos of his fake life with something like longing, not for Sarah, but for the simplicity of being Michael Chase, a man without a past worth hiding from. But there were good days too. Days when we'd work together in physical therapy, his hand in mine as he relearned coordination. Nights when we'd sit on my apartment balcony, sharing silence and tea, rebuilding our connection one moment at a time. 3 months after the surgery, we attended the trial. Nexus Pharma's executives faced justice for their crimes. The murdered whistleblower, the illegal human experiments, the lives destroyed by their ambition. Marcus testified with quiet dignity, my father's evidence ensuring convictions. Sarah, whose real name was Agent Rebecca Stone, testified too. She found me afterward in the courthouse bathroom. I need you to know, she said, taking care of him wasn't just an assignment. He's a good man. Even with manufactured memories, he talked about you. Called out for Elena in his sleep. The implant could suppress his memories, but it couldn't touch his heart. I wanted to hate her, but I couldn't. We were all victims of Nexus's manipulation in different ways. 6 months later, I found Marcus in my kitchen, making coffee with the same precise movements he'd used years ago. Morning light caught the silver in his hair, the new lines around his eyes. We weren't the same people who'd fallen in love at Harvard. We were older, wounded, wiser. I've been thinking, he said, handing me a mug prepared exactly how I liked it. Some things the brain never forgets. About time. What about it? How we lost 6 years. How we can't get them back. He set down his mug, taking my hands. I don't want to lose any more time, Elena. I know we're different now. I know I'm still recovering. But I love you. Not because I remember loving you before, but because I fall in love with you again every morning. He pulled out a ring. Not the elaborate diamond he'd given me before, but a simple band with an inscription, "No more lost time." Marry me, he said. Not the people we were, but who we are now. Scarred and imperfect and absolutely certain that we choose each other. I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The pain of abandonment, the shock of reunion, the terror of almost losing him again. The slow, difficult work of healing and forgiveness. The choice to love not despite our broken pieces, but because of how we'd learned to put them back together. Yes, I said, pulling him close. Yes to all of it. Yes to you. We married quietly, just family and close friends. My father walked me down the aisle, Marcus's recovered memories and new ones blending as he watched me approach. There were no dramatic speeches about destiny or soulmates. Instead, we promised to choose each other daily, to face whatever came with hands held tight and hearts open. I still work at Seattle Medical, saving lives with steady hands. Marcus teaches now, sharing his story to help other victims of neuromanipulation. We have dinner with my father every Sunday, grateful for second chances. Sometimes I wake at night and watch him sleep, still amazed he's here. He'll stir, pull me closer, murmur my name like a prayer. We both have nightmares sometimes, him of forgetting, me of losing him again. But we wake together, grounding each other in the present. Love isn't just the butterflies of new romance or the passion of youth. Sometimes it's the quiet determination to heal together, to build something new from the ashes of what was lost. It's choosing to trust after betrayal, to hope after despair, to believe that broken things can be beautiful too. We're planning to adopt, to give some child the love we've learned to rebuild. To teach them that family isn't about perfect people or perfect stories, but about choosing each other through the imperfect chapters. I don't know what tomorrow holds. Marcus's brain still bears scars from the implant. Nexus had connections we're still uncovering. The world remains complicated and sometimes cruel, but I know this. We're writing our story together now, word by word, day by day. No more stolen time, no more forced forgetting. Just two people who found their way back to each other and decided that was worth everything. The heart, it turns out, has a memory all its own. One that no technology can erase, no distance can diminish. It remembers love not in facts or dates, but in the feeling of coming home. And every morning, when Marcus hands me coffee and kisses my forehead, I'm home. My name is Emma Carter. 6 years ago, I ran from the love of my life, carrying a secret no one ever knew. But on that fateful rainy night, when my daughter collapsed on stage and was rushed into the ER, the doors swung open. And the man who walked in was the neurosurgeon. The very man I once loved, and the father who never knew he had a child. Whose little girl is this, Emma? His eyes cut straight through me, tearing at every truth I had buried. Subscribe if you've ever overcome a family crisis. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happens next. The windshield wipers couldn't keep up with the rain. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, pushing my old Honda through the flooded streets of Seattle. In the back seat, Lily wasn't moving. Please, baby, please. My voice cracked. The words came out like a prayer I didn't know who to send to. 20 minutes ago, she'd been taking her bow after her first piano recital. Her little fingers had found every note of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star perfectly. The audience, mostly other parents from her kindergarten, had clapped politely. She'd beamed at me from the stage, her dark hair bouncing as she curtsied. Then she'd collapsed. Now her face was too pale, her breathing too shallow. The purple bruise behind her ear, the one I'd noticed last week and told myself was nothing, seemed darker in the rearview mirror. Seattle Children's Hospital materialized through the rain like a beacon. I didn't park properly, didn't lock the car. I just scooped Lily into my arms and ran. Help, please, someone help. The emergency room swallowed us whole. Nurses appeared from nowhere, transferring Lily onto a gurney. Someone was asking me questions, allergies, medications, what happened, but I could barely form words. She just fell. After her recital, she's been tired lately, and there's this bruise. We've paged neurosurgery, a nurse said. Dr. Hayes is on his way. The name hit me like ice water. No, not here, not him. But the universe doesn't care about our careful plans, our desperate escapes. The doors burst open, and there he was. 6 years older, stubble shadowing his jaw, but unmistakably Nathan. His eyes, those green eyes that once looked at me like I was his whole world, swept the room professionally until they landed on me. He froze for exactly 1 second. Then his doctor mask slipped on, and he was beside the gurney, checking Lily's pupils with a penlight. How long has she been unconscious? His voice was steady, clinical. 15 minutes, maybe 20. His hands moved over Lily's head, and I saw the moment he noticed it. The small tattoo behind her neck, hidden under her hair, a musical note intertwined with tiny letters. I'd gotten it the day she was born, my secret reminder of everything I'd left behind. Nathan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but he kept working, calling out orders I didn't understand. Get her to CT, now. Call the OR. Tell them we might have a subdural hematoma with complications. As they wheeled Lily away, Nathan finally looked at me. Really looked at me. And in that look was a question that had waited 6 years for an answer. Emma, he said quietly. Just my name. But it carried the weight of everything. Every unanswered call, every disappeared trace, every lie I told myself about why leaving was the only choice. I couldn't speak, could only follow as they took my daughter, our daughter, into the depths of the hospital. The MRI results glowed on the screen like a death sentence. Nathan's face had gone pale beneath his professional composure. Behind him, the storm continued to rage against the windows. But inside this small consultation room, everything was terrifyingly still. It's a tumor, he said finally. Pilocytic astrocytoma with significant vascular involvement. She needs surgery within the next few hours. Or, he stopped, swallowed hard. Even after 6 years, I could read the micro-expressions he was trying to hide. Or she dies. I finished the sentence, he couldn't. He nodded, then pushed a consent form across the table. His hands, those hands that used to play guitar for me in his tiny apartment near Juilliard, were perfectly steady. Mine were shaking so badly I could barely hold the pen. I need to know her medical history, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Father's side especially. This type of tumor can have genetic components. The pen slipped from my fingers. Don't. The word came out sharp, then softer. Please, Emma, I'm trying to save her life. I need the truth. I closed my eyes, but that only made the memories stronger. Nathan at 28, playing his guitar on the fire escape. Me practicing cello in my underwear while he cooked breakfast. The positive pregnancy test hidden in my violin case. The night everything fell apart. She's yours. The words came out as a whisper. Nathan's professional mask finally cracked. He gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white, a mirror of my own desperate grip on the steering wheel just hours ago. The scar on her left shoulder, he said slowly. The way she sleeps with one hand under her pillow. The little humming sound she made when the nurse took her blood pressure. His voice broke. 6 years, Emma. 6 goddamn years. I wanted to explain, to tell him about that night I'd gone to his apartment to share the news, only to find his mother's town car parked outside. How I'd heard Victoria Hayes through the open window, discussing Nathan's arranged engagement to the daughter of her business partner. How she'd mentioned hiring a private investigator to handle Nathan's unfortunate attachment to that unstable musician. But Lily was dying, and explanations were a luxury we couldn't afford. I'm sorry, I said instead. Inadequate words for an unforgivable choice. Nathan stood abruptly. Save your apologies. I have to go prep for surgery. He paused at the door, not looking back. Did she ever ask about me? The question shattered something inside me. Every day, she has an imaginary friend named Nathan who teaches her piano in her dreams. He left without another word. I sat alone in that small room, signing consent forms with shaking hands, wondering if I'd just saved my daughter's life or destroyed it. Because now, Nathan knew the truth. And after he saved Lily, God, please let him save her, I'd lose them both all over again. The storm outside seemed to mock my prayers, but I prayed anyway, for steady hands, for miracles, for forgiveness I didn't deserve. 8 hours. That's how long I sat in the surgical waiting room, watching the clock move with excruciating slowness. Other families came and went, some crying with relief, others with grief. I remained frozen, clutching the stuffed rabbit Lily had dropped at the recital. You must be Emma. I looked up to find a woman in scrubs, her name tag reading Sarah Martinez, RN. Her eyes were kind but knowing. Nathan asked me to check on you, she said, sitting beside me. The surgery's going well. He's the best we have. I know. My voice was hoarse from crying. He always was the best at everything. Sarah studied me for a moment. You're the one who left. The musician from New York. It wasn't a question. I nodded, too exhausted to be defensive. He looked for you, she said quietly. Hired investigators, called every orchestra on the East Coast. His mother told him you'd moved to Europe with some conductor. She paused. He never believed her, but eventually, well, even hope has limits. His mother, the words tasted bitter. Does she know about? She died 2 years ago. Heart attack. Sarah's expression was carefully neutral. Nathan was with his brother when it happened. Brother? The word jolted through me. Nicholas died in college. The car accident. Sarah's eyes widened slightly. Oh, you don't know. She glanced around, then leaned closer. Nicholas survived. He was in a coma for 3 years, then made a miraculous recovery. He's different now. Works as a psychiatrist here, actually. Goes by Neil Harrison. The room tilted. Nicholas was alive? Victoria had told Nathan his twin was dead, had used that grief to control him for years. And now, Emma? Another voice? I turned to see a man who looked exactly like Nathan, except for the coldness in his green eyes. I'm Dr. Harrison. I've been following Lily's case. My body reacted before my mind could catch up, pulling back instinctively. This was wrong. The face was Nathan's, but everything else, the predatory smile, the calculated way he moved, screamed danger. Remarkable little girl, he continued, sitting too close. Those musical abilities at such a young age. The perfect pitch. She must get that from her mother. His smile widened. Or perhaps her father. You know, I always wondered what became of Nathan's little musician. Mother said you ran off, but I had my doubts. The surgery, I started, will be finished soon. My brother is nothing if not meticulous. He leaned back, studying me like I was a specimen. Tell me, Emma. That night, 6 years ago, at the Ritz-Carlton, the medical conference, Nathan was supposed to be on call, wasn't he? Ice flooded my veins. Because Nathan had been on call, I'd been upset about him missing my performance, had too much wine at the after party. And then Nathan had showed up unexpectedly, apologizing, saying he'd gotten coverage. We'd spent the night together, conceiving Lily in what I thought was a reconciliation. But the man smiling at me now, this man wearing Nathan's face, was telling me something else entirely. Something that made me want to grab Lily and run all over again. The OR doors opened. Nathan emerged, exhausted but smiling. She did great. She's going to be okay. Behind him, Nicholas's smile grew wider. The storm inside had only just begun. You're lying. The words scraped out of my throat as I stood in the recovery room, Lily sleeping between us like a bridge we were both afraid to cross. You're sick, and you're lying. Nicholas lounged against the doorframe, still wearing that horrible smile. Nathan looked between us, confusion replacing his surgical focus. What's going on? Your brother, I spit out, is trying to claim, I couldn't even say it. The thought was too monstrous. That I'm Lily's father? Nicholas straightened, his voice taking on a clinical tone. I'm simply pointing out the timeline. The Ritz-Carlton, February 15th. You were there, Emma. Nathan was on call at Presbyterian. I have the duty roster if you'd like to see it. Nathan's face went ashen. Nick, what the hell are you talking about? Oh, brother. Nicholas hissed. Still so naive. Did you really think Emma would wait alone in a hotel bar, 3 drinks in, wearing that little black dress? He pulled out his phone, swiped to a video. Security footage, grainy but clear enough. Me at the bar. A man approaching. Nathan's height, Nathan's build, Nathan's face. But now, looking at the brothers side by side, I could see the differences. The way Nicholas held his shoulders. The calculated charm versus Nathan's genuine warmth. No, I whispered. I was drunk, but not that drunk. I would have known. Would you? Nicholas moved closer. In the dark? When you expected Nathan? When I knew exactly what to say, how to touch you? His eyes glittered with sick satisfaction. Mother taught me well. Always have a contingency plan. Nathan's fist connected with Nicholas's jaw before any of us saw it coming. Nicholas went down hard, laughing even as blood filled his mouth. You're sick, Nathan growled. You've always been sick, and Mother enabled it. But this? DNA test, Nicholas said from the floor, still smiling. That's all it takes. Unless Emma's too afraid of what we'll find? Stop. A new voice from the doorway. An older man stepped in. Asian features, expensive suit, exhaustion written in every line of his face. Enough lies. I stared at the stranger, but something in his eyes, the shape of them, the way they crinkled when he looked at me, made my heart stutter. Hello, Emma. His voice was soft, carrying an accent I'd heard in my dreams. I know you thought I was dead. Your mother, she had her reasons for telling you that, but I've been watching, waiting for the right moment. Dad? The word came out broken. David Chen. The father who'd supposedly died when I was 2. Standing here like a ghost made real? I'm sorry, he continued, moving toward me slowly like I might run. But when I heard about Lily, about the tumor, I had to come. You see, it's not genetic from Nathan's side. He pulled out a medical file. It's from ours. A mutation from radiation exposure. Your grandfather, my father, he was part of a nuclear test program. Classified. The mutation skips generations, but... Lily stirred in her bed, whimpering. Both Nathan and Nicholas moved toward her, but she reached for Nathan. Daddy? She whispered, still groggy. My head hurts. Nathan gathered her gently, and in that moment, I saw the truth written in every gesture. Biology didn't matter. Nathan was her father in every way that counted. Nicholas slunk away, defeated. But my father remained, holding out a letter. There's more, Emma, about your mother, about why I had to disappear. But first, he looked at Lily, tears in his eyes. First, let me meet my granddaughter. My father's hands shook as he approached Lily's bed. 30 years of absence crystallized in that moment. The birthdays missed, the recitals unattended, the father-daughter dances I'd watched from the sidelines. She looks like your sister, he whispered. I don't have a sister. But even as I said it, something cold settled in my stomach. David's face crumpled. You did. A twin. She died at birth, but... He pulled out a faded photograph. 2 babies. Identical, except one was perfectly still. The doctors said the radiation damage affected her worse. You absorbed most of her stem cells in utero. It saved you, but it created a chimeric genetic pattern, Nathan finished, his medical mind working even as he held our daughter. That's why the tumor presented so strangely. Lily isn't just carrying your DNA, Emma. She's carrying your sister's too. I sank into the chair, overwhelmed. My dead twin. My not dead father. Nicholas's sick games. It was too much. Why now? I asked David. Why show up now? Because Victoria Hayes is dead, he said simply. She couldn't hurt you anymore. Victoria? What does Nathan's mother have to do with everything? David's voice hardened. She was my business partner in the late 90s. We ran unofficial medical trials, testing radiation exposure treatments. When she learned about you, about the twin DNA, she became obsessed. She wanted to study you, to use you. I refused, so she destroyed me. Fabricated evidence of embezzlement, threatened to expose the illegal trials. I had to disappear. Nathan had gone very still. The trials, Mother's pharmaceutical company, it was built on blood money, David confirmed, but she kept the secret well, even from you. Lily stirred again, her eyes focusing on David. Who are you? David looked at me, asking permission. I found myself nodding. After so many lies, maybe truth was all we had left. I'm your grandfather, he said softly. Your mommy's daddy. Lily studied him with that intense focus only children have. Mommy said her daddy went to heaven. I got lost for a while, David said, but I found my way back. Because I'm sick? Her voice was so small. Because you're loved, Nathan interjected firmly. By so many people. Sarah appeared in the doorway. I'm sorry to interrupt, but security is looking for a Dr. Harrison. Apparently he's been accessing restricted medical files. Nathan's jaw tightened. Nicholas, he's looking for something. The trial data, David said urgently. If he gets the original files, proves the connection between the radiation exposure and Lily's tumor, he could sue for custody, I finished. Claim we're medically negligent. Or worse, Nathan said quietly. He could expose everything. The illegal trials, the cover-ups. It would destroy the hospital, everyone involved. I looked at Lily, so small in the hospital bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit. She'd been through so much already. The thought of her being dragged through a custody battle, becoming a medical experiment like I almost was. We stop him, I said. Whatever it takes, we protect her. Nathan nodded, and for the first time in 6 years, we were a united front. Not for us, but for her. For our daughter, who deserved better than the legacy of lies we'd all inherited. David stood. I know where he'll go. Victoria kept copies of everything in a safety deposit box. If we hurry, no. Lily's voice was stronger than it had been all day. No more running. Please, Mommy. I'm tired of people leaving. She was right. We'd all spent so long running. From truth, from each other, from ourselves. Maybe it was time to stop. The confrontation came at midnight. Nicholas had barricaded himself in Victoria's old office, now a storage room, surrounded by boxes of files. Through the glass door, we could see him frantically searching, documents scattered like fallen leaves. It has to be here, he muttered, not noticing us at first. Mother promised, said if anything happened, if Nathan ever found out what? Nathan's voice cut through Nicholas's rambling. Nicholas spun around, clutching a thick folder. His polished mask had finally cracked, revealing something desperate and broken underneath. That you were supposed to die. The words hung in the air like poison. The skiing accident when we were 12, Mother arranged it. You were supposed to die, and I was supposed to be the only son. The better son. But you survived, and suddenly I was the spare again. Nathan stepped forward, and I saw his hands shaking. That's insane. Is it? Nicholas laughed bitterly. You got everything. The surgical gift, the natural charm, the ability to make people love you without trying. And what did I get? Therapy sessions, and Mother whispering that I'd never be enough. So you decided to steal my life? Sleep with Emma? I didn't. Nicholas stopped, his face crumbling. I couldn't go through with it. God, I wanted to. Sat in that bar for hours, watching her. planning every word, but when the moment came, he looked at me, really looked at me for the first time. You called me Nathan when I sat down, so trusting, so in love, and I realized I didn't want to be him. I wanted to be someone you could love as me. The room went silent. Even David seemed to be holding his breath. I never touched you, Nicholas continued. Put you in a cab, sent you home. But when Lily was born, when the timing lined up, I let everyone think what they wanted. It was the closest I'd ever come to having something Nathan wanted. Nathan DNA test results crumpled in his hand. You're sick, Nick. You need help. Nicholas's voice broke. I needed a mother who didn't see me as defective. A brother who didn't eclipse me just by existing. A life that was mine, not some shadow of yours. I thought of Lily, upstairs in her room, how fiercely I'd protected her, how far I'd run to keep her safe. But I'd also kept her from her father, from a whole family who could have loved her. The realization hit like a physical blow. We all need things we can't have, I said quietly. But that doesn't give us the right to destroy others trying to get them. Nicholas looked at the files in his hands. Evidence of Victoria's crimes. Ammunition for a war that would hurt everyone, especially Lily. Slowly, deliberately, he walked to the shredder. You're right, he said, feeding papers into the machine. I'm tired of being her weapon. Nathan moved then, crossing to his brother. They stood there, twins divided by more than just personality, watching their mother's legacy turn to confetti. I'm checking myself into Fairfax, Nicholas said when the last document was gone. The psychiatric program. It's time I faced what she made me into. I'll drive you, Nathan offered. Nicholas shook his head. No, this I do alone. But Nathan? He paused at the door. Take care of them. Be the father I pretended to be. He left then, and something in the air shifted. The storm that had raged all night began to calm. Nathan turned to me, exhaustion and hope warring in his eyes. Can we talk? Really talk? About everything? I nodded. It was time. We sat in the hospital cafeteria at 3 a.m., surrounded by the ghosts of our past. Nathan's coffee had gone cold, but he kept clutching the cup like an anchor. I picked at a blueberry muffin, unable to eat. Why didn't you fight for me? The question I'd carried for 6 years spilled out. One day we were planning our future, the next you were engaged to someone else. Nathan's laugh was hollow. Engaged? Emma, I was never engaged. Mother planted those stories, hired actors to play the part at hospital functions. I was so desperate to find you, I didn't even notice until months later. But I saw what she wanted you to see. His voice was gentle but firm. Every word, every scene, orchestrated to drive you away. And it worked because we both let our fears speak louder than our love. The truth of it stung. I'd run at the first sign of trouble, too scared to confront him, too proud to seem like the desperate pregnant girlfriend. I was at your apartment, I admitted. The night I found out about Lily, I had this whole speech planned, but then I saw Victoria's car, heard her on the phone talking about handling me. And instead of coming inside, you left. Not an accusation, just unbearable sadness. If you'd walked through that door, Emma, I was writing resignation letters, was going to tell her I was done with surgery, done with her plans, that all I wanted was you and music and whatever life we could build together. I finally looked up, meeting his eyes. We can't change what happened. No, he agreed, but we can choose what happens next. From his pocket, he pulled out something that stopped my heart. A small velvet box, worn at the edges. I bought this the day before you disappeared, he said, opening it. Inside was a simple silver ring with a small sapphire, my birthstone. Nothing fancy. A musician and a resident couldn't afford fancy, but it was real. Nathan, I'm not proposing, he said quickly. I'm just showing you that you weren't some fling, that what we had was real enough that I've carried this for 6 years, through every date my mother arranged, every woman Sarah tried to set me up with, because none of them played cello at 3 a.m. or put hot sauce on their eggs or hummed Brahms when they were nervous. I was crying now, silent tears that tasted like regret and possibility. I can't just pick up where we left off, I whispered. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to start somewhere new. As who we are now, parents who made mistakes, adults who've been broken and patched ourselves back together. People who know that love isn't enough by itself, but maybe it's a place to begin. Upstairs, Lily was probably awake, wondering where we were. My father was in a hotel, rebuilding his own bridges. Nicholas was getting help. The storm had passed, leaving wreckage but also clarity. Okay, I said. We begin again. For her. For her, Nathan agreed. And maybe, eventually, for us too. He reached across the table, palm up. An invitation, not a demand. I thought of all the times I'd taken his hand, learning to dance at Juilliard, walking through Central Park that last morning before everything fell apart. This time, when I took his hand, I held on. 6 months later, Seattle's rain felt different. Softer somehow, less like punishment and more like renewal. I stood in the wings of Benaroya Hall, cello in hand, watching the audience fill with familiar faces. Nervous? Nathan appeared beside me, Lily on his shoulders. She wore a tiny purple dress and clutched a bouquet of daisies. Terrified, I admitted. My first performance in 6 years. The Seattle Symphony had offered me a guest spot, a chance to play the Dvorak cello concerto I'd been practicing the night Lily was conceived. "You're gonna be beautiful, Mommy," Lily declared, playing with Nathan's hair. The surgery scar hidden beneath her curls was now just another part of her story. Monthly MRIs showed no regrowth. The experimental treatment David had helped develop, using research from those awful trials for something good, was working. 5 minutes, the stage manager called. Nathan lowered Lily, and she threw her arms around me. "Break a leg, but not really because then you'd need Daddy to fix it." I laughed, the sound surprising me with its fullness. 6 months of family therapy, of careful steps toward trust, of learning to be parents together. It was working. Not perfect, but real. "I'll be right there." Nathan pointed to the front row. "David too, and Sarah, and even that guy from your quartet who keeps bringing casseroles." "Tom's just being friendly," I protested. "Tom's in love with you," Nathan said mildly. "But he knows you're taken." "Am I?" We hadn't put labels on this new thing between us. Co-parents, friends, something more that we were both too scared and hopeful to name. He smiled. That crooked smile I'd fallen for at 22. "You tell me." The lights dimmed. I walked onto the stage, the spotlight finding me like an old friend. The audience quieted. In the front row, my father, still learning to be dad, gave me a thumbs up. Lily waved enthusiastically until Nathan gently lowered her hands. I raised my bow, and muscle memory took over. The first notes of Dvorak filled the hall, rich and mournful, and ultimately triumphant. As I played, I thought about second chances, about the lies we tell to protect ourselves and others, about the courage it takes to stop running. Halfway through the second movement, I saw him. Nicholas, in the back, with a companion from his treatment center. He was thinner but clearer-eyed. He caught my gaze and nodded once. Another broken thing slowly mending. The music swelled, and I lost myself in it. This was what I'd given up, what I'd thought I had to sacrifice. But here I was, playing not in spite of my choices, but because of them. Every note was informed by love and loss, by midnight hospital vigils and morning laughter. When the last note faded, the silence held for a breath. Then thunder, applause that shook the hall. I stood, bowing, and found Nathan's eyes. He was crying. My stoic surgeon, who'd held it together through brain surgery and family revelations, was openly weeping at the beauty of music, of this moment, of us. Lily broke free from his grasp and ran on stage, flowers flying. The audience laughed and applauded harder. I scooped her up, this miracle child who'd brought us all back together. "I love you, Mommy," she whispered in my ear. "I love you too, baby." Looking out at our strange, patched-together family, birth father and chosen father, grandfather returned from the dead, brother finding his way back to humanity, I realized something. We'd all been running from storms, never realizing we were the shelter each other needed. The rain continued outside, washing the city clean. We were home. My name is Elena Carter. 7 years ago, I disappeared from the man I loved most, carrying the biggest secret of my life. I raised my daughter alone, convinced he had betrayed me. Until the day she performed the piece I wrote in heartbreak. And under a video with millions of views, one comment froze my blood. "This is my daughter. Please, Elena, let me explain." Before I share the rest of my story, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Hit the like button and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happens next. The violin bow slipped from my fingers the moment our eyes met. In 27 years of playing, through recitals at Juilliard and street performances in the rain, I'd never lost grip of my bow. But there, in that crowded Brooklyn Community Center, surrounded by the children I taught for free, something in Nathan Hale's gaze made my hands forget their purpose. I bent to retrieve it, heat flooding my cheeks. The kids giggled. Miss Elena never made mistakes. When I straightened, he was still watching. This man in his $1,000 suit standing among donated folding chairs, looking as out of place as a swan in a subway station. "Keep playing," little Maria whispered, tugging my dress. "The rich people need to hear us." I took the violin back under my chin and closed my eyes, letting Pachelbel's Canyon flow through me like it had 1,000 times before. But this time, I felt his eyes like spotlights, warming and exposing me all at once. After the benefit concert, while I helped the kids pack their instruments, I overheard him arguing with another man near the exit. Both wore the same expensive confidence, but their words were sharp. "The Sunset Park project isn't negotiable, Nathan," the other man said. 40 city blocks? Victor's already got the mayor on board. "These people live here, Adrian. Kids learn music here. Kids can learn music anywhere." I froze, clutching Sofia Ramirez's rental violin case. "Sunset Park, my neighborhood. Our neighborhood." Nathan's voice dropped lower. "I won't be part of displacing families." "You already are. Your signature's on the preliminary surveys." The case handle dug into my palm. Another rich developer. Another community about to be revitalized until none of us could afford to live in it. I should have known men like him didn't come to Brooklyn community centers out of kindness. When I looked up, Nathan stood before me, Adrian gone. Up close, his eyes weren't the cold blue of winter I'd expected, but warm like August sky. "You dropped this," he said, holding out my bow. "I'm Nathan. I know who you are." The words came out harder than intended. "I heard." His face changed, understanding flickering across it. "It's not what you..." "It never is." I took the bow, careful not to let our fingers touch. "Thank you for coming to support the children, Mr. Hale." I turned away, but his voice followed. "I'd like to hear you play again, properly, without me making you nervous." I almost laughed. Nervous? He thought he made me nervous? I was terrified. He appeared at our next 3 concerts. Always in the back, always alone, always leaving a donation that could fund our program for months. The children started calling him Mr. Nathan and saving him a seat. "He watches you," Maria observed one evening, organizing sheet music with the seriousness only an 8-year-old could muster. Like how my papa watched Mama before they got married. "He watches everyone," I corrected, though I knew she was right. 3 weeks in, he approached during cleanup. "I have a proposition." My hands stilled on the violin case. Here it comes, and the offer to help that always came with strings. "I'm listening." "I'm designing a community space, music rooms, practice halls, affordable housing above, for Sunset Park." He pulled out his phone, showing me sketches. "I want it to be right. I need someone who understands what this neighborhood actually needs." The drawings were beautiful. Too beautiful. "What's the catch?" "No catch, just coffee. You tell me what would work, what wouldn't. Consultant fee, if you prefer. I don't need your money." "Then do it for them." He gestured to my students filing out. "Help me build something that won't force them to leave." Against my better judgment, I agreed to 1 coffee, which became 2, then dinner. Then walks through Prospect Park, where he'd point out architectural details I'd never noticed, and I'd teach him to hear the city's rhythm, subway percussion, taxi horns in B-flat, and the melody of 5 languages blending on 1 block. Adrian joined us once, Nathan's business partner and oldest friend. Handsome, in a sharper way, quick to laugh, quicker to touch my elbow when making a point. He asked about my music, my dreams, actually listened to the answers. "You're good for him?" Adrian told me privately, while Nathan took a call. I haven't seen him this human in years. Human? He builds beautiful cages and forgets people need to live in them. You remind him why the windows matter. The compliment felt like a warning. One evening, Nathan showed me his real project. Not just one building, but a whole development model. Affordable housing that stayed affordable. Community spaces that communities actually controlled. My father would hate it, he admitted. No maximum profit. Just enough. "Why?" I asked. He was quiet so long I thought he wouldn't answer. "My mother grew up in a place like Sunset Park. Dad made his fortune developing it. She spent her last years trying to find her old neighbors. Apologize. They'd all been scattered." He met my eyes. "I'm tired of building things that break communities." That night, I let him walk me home. At my door, he touched my face like I was made of music he was afraid to interrupt. "I'm not good at this," he whispered. "At what?" "Wanting someone more than I want to succeed." I should have heard the warning in that too. Nathan proposed 6 months later, in the community center where we met, after hours when streetlight filtered through windows like cathedral glass. He didn't kneel. Instead, he unrolled architectural plans across the donated piano. "What's this?" I asked, though my heart already knew. "Our house, if you'll have it, and me." The drawings showed everything I'd mentioned in passing. A music room with perfect acoustics, windows facing the garden because I loved morning light, a kitchen big enough for my grandmother's recipes. He'd been listening all along, collecting my dreams like sheet music. "Nathan?" "I know it's fast. I know I'm asking a lot. But Elena, you've rewritten everything I thought I wanted. Let me build something for us." The ring was his mother's, he said. Simple. Musical almost. The diamond held between prongs like a note suspended in time. I said yes. Of course I did. Love makes fools of careful women. Adrian threw us an engagement party that felt like a warning wrapped in champagne. Toast from people I'd never met, who looked at my Target dress and department store heels with polite confusion. Nathan kept my hand in his, thumb stroking circles like a promise. "You belong here because I choose you." "Quite the Cinderella story," a woman commented, diamonds dripping from her neck. "From teaching in Brooklyn to, well, I still teach in Brooklyn," I said. Her laugh tinkled like broken glass. "How dedicated." Adrian appeared with fresh drinks, steering her away. "Elena's changing how we think about community development," he said smoothly. "Nathan's lucky to have her insight." Later, on the terrace, I caught Nathan staring at his phone, face carved in shadows. "What's wrong?" He pocketed it quickly. "Nothing. Business." "Nathan? Really, just, Victor Langston wants a meeting. He's interested in our Sunset Park model." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Could be huge for the community." I should have pushed, should have asked why the name Victor Langston made him grip his champagne flute like a weapon. Instead, I let him pull me back inside, where Adrian was playing piano, some jazzy tune that made everyone forget their worries. The next morning, a manila envelope appeared under my door. No return address. Inside, a single photo. Nathan entering a restaurant with a woman, her hand on his arm, familiar like lovers. My first thought wasn't anger or heartbreak. It was, of course, because girls like me don't get fairy tales. We get reminders of our place. I stuffed the photo in a drawer, told myself I'd ask him, told myself there was an explanation. There always was, until there wasn't. St. Patrick's Cathedral looked like heaven had descended to Fifth Avenue. Flowers cascaded from every surface, and 300 guests waited inside. Nathan's world, ready to swallow mine. I stood in the bridal suite, watching Manhattan blur through tears I wouldn't let fall. Maria, my smallest student, held my train like it was spun from dreams. You look like a princess, Miss Elena. Princesses are make-believe, sweetheart. She frowned at my tone. Below, organ music swelled. My cue in 10 minutes. 9, 8. My phone buzzed. Nathan, probably, with another sweet message. But the caller ID showed unknown. Don't answer, my sister Rosa warned. Not today. But I did. I always did the thing I shouldn't. Beautiful dress. A man's voice, smooth like oil over water. Shame it'll be wasted. Who is this? Victor Langston, Nathan's business associate. We need to discuss your fiancé's promises. The ones he's breaking to marry you. My hand shook. I don't know what. Sunset Park, my dear, 40 blocks. Nathan signed agreements months ago. After your honeymoon, he'll honor them, or I'll make sure you understand the cost of his betrayal. Check your messages. The line died. With trembling fingers, I opened my texts. Screenshots of contracts, Nathan's signature clear as day. Demolition permits, eviction schedules, everything he'd promised to protect, signed away. 2 minutes, Elena. The wedding coordinator's voice chirped through the door. I couldn't breathe. The dress, so perfect an hour ago, felt like a straitjacket. Maria tugged my hand. Miss Elena? You look sick. I need air. Just give me a moment. But moments were luxuries I'd run out of. The door opened and Adrian stepped in, concern creasing his perfect face. Elena? Nathan sent me to check. He stopped, seeing my phone. What's wrong? I showed him, wordless. His face cycled through emotions too fast to read. This has to be fake. Nathan would never, wouldn't he? The words scraped out. You're his best friend, his business partner. Tell me you didn't know. Adrian gripped my shoulders, gentle but firm. I swear, I had no idea. Elena, listen to me. We can figure this out after I marry him? After I promise to trust him with my life? After we get proof. This could be Victor trying to. He paused, pulling out his own phone. His face went white. Oh God. What? He turned the screen. An email from Nathan to Victor, dated last week. The wedding will buy us time. Elena doesn't need to know until it's done. The bouquet slipped from my numb fingers, white roses scattering like the promises Nathan had made. Somewhere, the organ started the processional. I can't, I whispered. Adrian's arms went around me as I shook. I'll handle Nathan. Get out. Backstairs. My car's outside. I ran. Wedding dress trailing, guests gasping, Maria calling after me. Just a runaway bride. Another woman who had learned too late that love was just a prettier word for betrayal. New Jersey felt like another planet. Rosa's spare room became my universe. 4 walls to contain the mess I'd become. The wedding dress hung in the closet like a ghost. You need to tell him, Rosa said for the 100th time, watching me hunch over the toilet. Tell him what? That I'm pregnant with the baby of a man who lied about everything? She held my hair back, steady as always. Tell him you're safe at least. The man's called 50 times. I turned my phone off after the first 10 messages. Adrian had called too, left voicemails I couldn't bear to hear. The only person who knew where I was Rosa, and I'd made her swear silence. 6 weeks passed in a haze of morning sickness and afternoon tears. I returned to work, teaching violin to new students who didn't ask why Miss Elena looked so sad. At night, I'd press my hand to my still flat stomach and whisper apologies to the tiny life that would never know its father. Then Adrian appeared at my door, soaking from November rain. How did you? Rosa called me. She's worried. He looked terrible, exhaustion carved into his perfect features. Elena, please, just hear me out. There's nothing to. Nathan's falling apart. He's dropped the Sunset Park deal. Lost millions fighting Victor in court. Barely sleeps. Good. Adrian's eyes softened. You don't mean that. I turned away, but he caught my arm, gentle. That's when his gaze dropped to my middle, to the protective hand I didn't realize I'd placed there. Oh, he breathed. Elena, no. Does he? No. And he won't. The words came out fierce. This baby deserves better than a father who builds beautiful lies. Adrian sank into Rose's kitchen chair like his strings had been cut. This changes everything. I don't have to do anything except protect my child. Our child needs to know. He stopped, horror flickering across his face at the slip. I mean, the child. Your child. But I'd heard it. Like he had any claim. You love me. It wasn't a question. The truth sat between us, heavy as the storm outside. Adrian looked away. I've loved you since that first concert. Watched Nathan fall for you and hated myself for wanting what he had. But I would never. He met my eyes. I just want you safe. Both of you. Then keep our secret. Elena, promise me, Adrian, on whatever friendship you had with Nathan. He doesn't get to know. He was quiet so long I thought he'd refuse. Then, I'll do whatever you need. Always. I believed him. Another mistake and a symphony of them. The contractions started during the worst storm in a decade. 7 months pregnant and this baby was coming, whether the world was ready or not. Just like its mother. Terrible timing, stubborn to the core. I called Nathan. Don't ask me why. Maybe pain makes us stupid. Or maybe I wanted him to know what he was missing. The phone rang once, twice. Elena? His voice broke on my name like he'd been gargling glass. God, Elena, where? I'm in labor, I gasped out between contractions. Your child is... Another wave hit. I couldn't finish. Where are you? I'm coming. Elena, please. Doesn't matter. You have that meeting with Victor tonight. The one worth 10 billion. Remember? More important than... I screamed as the pain peaked. Fuck Victor. Fuck the meeting. Where are you? But I'd already hung up. Let him choose his empire. We'd chosen life. Rosa drove through flooding streets, but the bridge was closed. Trapped between contractions and rising water, I called the only other person who might come. Adrian answered immediately. What's wrong? 20 minutes later, he carried me into Mount Sinai's emergency room like I weighed nothing, shouting for doctors while I bled through Rosa's car blankets. The nurses assumed he was the father. The way he held my hand wouldn't leave my side. She's hemorrhaging, someone said. We need to operate now. Do whatever it takes, Adrian commanded. Save them both. The last thing I saw before the darkness, Adrian's face, tears streaming as he whispered, I've got you. I've got both of you. I woke to rhythmic beeping and the weight of survival. Adrian sat beside my bed, a tiny bundle in his arms. She's perfect, he whispered. 6 pounds, screaming like her mama. Fighter from the start. I reached for my daughter, this miracle wrapped in hospital blankets. Where's... Nathan arrived an hour ago. I sent him to the cafeteria. Adrian's jaw tightened. Elena, there's something you should know. The birth certificate. They needed information while you were unconscious. I may have... Mr. Wells? A nurse appeared. We need you to sign the paternity acknowledgement, since you're listed as the father. The world stopped. You what? Adrian had the grace to look guilty. You were dying. They needed next of kin. I couldn't let Nathan, not after what he did. That wasn't your choice. Elena, please. You nearly died. Sophia needed... Sophia? His face softened. You kept saying the name during labor. I thought... Footsteps in the hallway. Nathan's voice, demanding answers. Adrian quickly handed me the baby, leaning close. Let me protect you. Both of you. He doesn't deserve... Get out. The words barely escaped. Get out. But it was too late. The damage was done. In trying to save me, Adrian had stolen something that wasn't his to take. Nathan appeared in the doorway just as Adrian left. His face... God, his face, when he saw the baby. Is she... I turned away, clutching Sophia closer. Sometimes salvation looks exactly like damnation. Sophia learned violin before she could properly hold a spoon. By 7, she played with the kind of passion that made strangers stop on the street. She had Nathan's eyes, my stubbornness, and a laugh that could heal the broken parts of me. Almost. We lived quietly in Queens. I taught music, built a life measured in recital schedules and school pickups. Adrian visited monthly, playing the devoted uncle who brought too many gifts and watched me with eyes full of unspoken words. Why don't I have a daddy? Sophia asked one evening, her bow poised over strings. You have me, and Uncle Adrian. But Maria has a daddy, and Tomas, and... Play your scales, baby. She did, but the questions lingered in every note. I never spoke Nathan's name, didn't search for him online, didn't wonder if he'd married someone appropriate, someone who understood his world. Adrian volunteered nothing, and I asked for less. Then YouTube changed everything. Miss Elena? One of my students burst into the studio. Sophia's famous? Look. Someone had filmed Sophia playing at the spring showcase. My composition. The one I'd written while loving Nathan. Thinking we'd build forever. The video exploded. 7-year-old prodigy plays mother's heartbreak symphony. 3 million views in 2 days. Comments flooding in about her talent, her passion, the way she made the violin weep. And then, buried in thousands of replies, one that made my blood freeze. This is my daughter. Please, Elena, let me explain. The account was verified. Nathan Hale, architect, philanthropist, still unmarried, according to Google. Still building things that helped communities thrive. Adrian arrived within hours of the video going viral. We need to talk. We need to move. Change our names. Leave before her father finds her? Adrian's voice turned sharp. Elena, this has gone on long enough. You don't get to decide. I've kept your secret for 7 years. Lied to my best friend. Watched him destroy himself. Wondering why you ran? He pulled out a manila folder, thick with papers. But I'm done enabling this. Inside, every document from that terrible time. Proof that Nathan fought Victor. Lost everything defending Sunset Park. Proof that the contracts I'd seen were forgeries. Proof that the woman in the photo was his sister. Proof that I'd run from the one person trying to save us all. No, I whispered. This isn't... Adrian, you showed me... His face crumbled. I showed you what I thought was real. I believe Victor too. By the time I learned the truth, you were gone. And He stopped. I couldn't lose you both. I'm sorry. Sophia's laughter drifted from the next room, where she played for her stuffed animals. 7 years of lies. From everyone. Including me. Nathan stood on my doorstep, looking like 7 years of grief had carved him hollow. Sophia peeked from behind me, curious about the stranger who'd made her mother shake. You have my eyes, he said softly to her. Lots of people have blue eyes, she replied, but I heard the question underneath. Sophia, go practice, please. She went, trailing confused glances. Nathan and I faced each other across a chasm of lost time. I know about Adrian, he said simply. About the papers, the lies, all of it. How long have you known? 6 months. Private investigator found the truth after I saw a photo of you two at her school concert. His voice broke. 6 months of knowing where you were and staying away because I thought you were happy with him. I was never with Adrian. But the birth certificate was a lie, like everything else that night. I sank onto the porch step, exhausted by the weight of truth. I was dying, Nathan. He made a choice. Nathan sat beside me, careful not to touch. I should have fought harder. Should have found you sooner. Should have told me about Victor from the start. He flinched. I was trying to protect you, to handle it without dragging you into his ugliness. A bitter laugh. Instead, I lost everything that mattered. We sat in silence, listening to Sophia's music drift through windows. My composition filtered through her innocence. She's brilliant, he whispered. She's yours. The words hung between us like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Nathan buried his face in his hands. 7 years, Elena. She's 7 years old, and I've missed everything. I'm sorry. The words felt too small. I was scared, hurt, young and stupid, and human. He looked at me then, still Nathan, despite the gray threading his temples. We were both human. The door creaked. Sophia stood there, violin in hand. Mama, why are you crying? I opened my mouth, but Nathan spoke first. Because sometimes happy tears and sad tears look the same. I'm Nathan, by the way. She studied him with those shared eyes. Nathan like in Mama's song? The one she cries when she plays? My face burned, but Nathan smiled. The first real smile I'd seen. Yeah, like in the song. Are you staying for dinner? We both looked at her. This bridge between our broken pieces. That's up to your mom, Nathan said carefully. Sophia turned to me, hope shining. Can he, Mama? Please? One dinner, one chance, one possibility of rebuilding. Okay, I whispered, just dinner. But we all knew it was more than that. It was a beginning. 6 months later, I stood backstage at Lincoln Center, watching Sophia tune her violin. She'd insisted on performing my composition. Our composition, she called it now. The one that started everything. Nervous? Nathan appeared beside me, close but not touching. We were learning to be friends first, parents second, and maybe someday, something more. Terrified. She'll be amazing, like her mother. On stage, the announcer introduced Sophia Hale Carter, and my heart stuttered at the hyphenated name, her choice, her bridge between worlds. Adrian sat in the audience, 3 rows back. We'd found our way to forgiveness, or at least understanding. He loved me, had loved us both in his broken way. But love without trust is just beautiful damage. Victor Langston was serving 5 years for fraud. The Sunset Park Community Center stood strong, teaching music to kids who needed to believe in something bigger than circumstances. Sophia began to play, and the melody that had once meant heartbreak transformed. In her hands, it became something else. Resilience, maybe. Hope. The story of people who fail and try again. Nathan's hand found mine in the dark. Not grasping, just there, available, patient. I'm not ready, I whispered. I know. I might never be ready. I know that too. And Sophia reached the crescendo, the part I'd written while breaking, and somehow made it sound like healing. The audience held its breath. But maybe, I said, so quiet only he could hear, maybe we could try, slowly. His fingers intertwined with mine, answer enough. On stage, our daughter played the last note, not an ending, but a pause before the next movement. The crowd erupted, but she looked only at us, her smile brighter than stage lights. That was for you, she mouthed, both of you. Adrian caught my eye from the audience, nodded once, and then slipped out. His part in our story, finally complete. Nathan and I walked on stage to join Sophia. 3 people who'd found each other after being lost. The audience saw a touching family moment. We knew better. We were a work in progress, a melody still being written. But for the first time in 7 years, I believed we might find our way to harmony. The bow was in my hand. The music was ours to play. And this time, I wouldn't let go.
My name is Olivia Harper, and my life took a turn no one could have imagined. The man who once swore we'd build a future together was the same one who coldly said, "This baby is a distraction. End it tomorrow." And then, 5 years later, he stood in front of me, his eyes locked on my daughter, as if he were staring at his own reflection from the past. Before I share my full story, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever faced or overcome heartbreak. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happened next. The pregnancy test shook in my hands like a leaf in autumn wind. 2 pink lines stared back at me from the tiny window, as certain as the Manhattan skyline outside our apartment. Nathan was in the kitchen, humming while he made coffee, that expensive Ethiopian blend he loved, the sound of normalcy when everything had just changed. Nathan, my voice came out smaller than intended. He appeared in the doorway, still in his Stanford t-shirt, hair messy from sleep. God, I loved him like that. Unguarded before the world demanded he become the tech genius everyone expected. His startup had just secured Series B funding. Investors were circling like hawks. I held up the test. His humming stopped. Is that? He didn't finish. Didn't need to. His face went through a slideshow of emotions. Surprise, fear, then something else. Calculation. I'm pregnant. He crossed the room in 3 strides, took the test from my hand, studied it like code he needed to debug. Then he set it carefully on the coffee table as if it might explode. "Okay," he said slowly. "Okay, we can handle this." For 3 days, we orbited each other like careful planets. He brought me ginger tea for morning sickness, rubbed my feet, whispered about baby names. I let myself dream. A brownstone in Brooklyn, toy-scattered floors, Nathan teaching our child to code before they could write. Then came Thursday, the IPO announcement. He came home different that night, suit sharp, jaw set, eyes already somewhere else. He poured himself whiskey, neat, no ice, and didn't offer me my usual wine before remembering. "Olivia, we need to talk." Those 4 words, every woman knows them. They sat between us like a loaded gun. "The timing," he started, stopped, started again. "The IPO changes everything. The board, the investors. I can't have any distractions, not now." Distractions? The word tasted like ash. "Our baby is a distraction?" He set down his glass, precise and deliberate. When he looked at me, I saw a stranger wearing my boyfriend's face. "End it. Tomorrow. I'll pay for everything. The best clinic." "Stop." My hand went to my stomach, protective already. "Just stop. Be practical, Liv. You're in law school. I'm about to run a public company. This isn't the right time." "When is the right time, Nathan? After your second billion?" He stood, adjusted his cuffs, a nervous tell I'd found endearing once. "I'm trying to be responsible here." "Responsible?" I laughed, sharp and bitter. "You mean convenient? I mean realistic. Make the appointment, Olivia. This discussion is over." That's when I knew. 3 years, countless promises, shared dreams, all of it meant less than stock options and board meetings. I stood too, my legs surprisingly steady. No. One word. It changed everything. The Greyhound bus to Ohio smelled like old vinyl and other people's stories. I pressed my face against the window, watching New York shrink until it was just light pollution on the horizon. 22 years old, 14 weeks pregnant, and running to nowhere with $1,847 in my checking account. Nathan had blocked my number before I'd even finished packing. Our mutual friends suddenly had crazy busy schedules. His mother called once. I let it go to voicemail, deleted it unheard. Clean breaks hurt less, or so I told myself at 3 a.m. when the baby fluttered for the first time. Zanesville, Ohio became home by default. Cheap rent, no questions asked, and far enough from anyone who knew the Olivia Harper who was supposed to clerk for a federal judge next summer. That girl was gone. This one stocked shelves at Walmart, always volunteering for overtime. The first ultrasound revealed twins. The technician's cheerful 2 heartbeats sent me into the bathroom, where I sat on the closed toilet and laughed until I cried. Or maybe the reverse. 2 babies, of course. The universe had a sense of humor. I named them during a thunderstorm. Ethan for strength, Sophia for wisdom. Things I'd need to teach them alone. Labor started during the dinner shift at Mel's Diner. I'd been wiping down tables, ignoring the backache that had plagued me all day. Then my water broke, dramatic and undeniable, right by booth 6. Mel drove me to the hospital in his pickup, chain-smoking and muttering prayers. 23 hours later, they were here. Ethan first, screaming and perfect. Sophia followed, quiet but alert, her eyes, Nathan's eyes, taking in the world. The nurse asked if anyone should be called. "No," I whispered, holding my babies while rain lashed the windows. "We're complete." Those first months blurred together, crying, theirs and mine, feeding schedules military in precision, diaper changes at ungodly hours. I developed a system, Ethan on the left, always hungrier, Sophia on the right, content to wait. My body became a machine, fuel in, milk out, function over form. Money was a constant shadow. Formula when my milk dried up from stress, $50 a week. Diapers, $80. Rent, utilities, the minimum payment on credit cards I'd sworn never to use. I cleaned offices at night while Mrs. Chen from downstairs watched the twins for $20 and leftover dinners. One night, delirious from exhaustion, I found myself in the cereal aisle at 2 a.m., Sophia strapped to my chest, Ethan in the cart. An elderly woman smiled at us. "Your husband must be so helpful," she said warmly. I smiled back, too tired to correct her, wondering what Nathan was doing at that exact moment. Probably sleeping in Egyptian cotton sheets, unaware his children existed in a world of generic diapers and expired coupons. Success has a way of finding you, even in small towns. Nathan's face appeared on my phone screen while I waited for the twins' vaccine appointment. Tech wunderkind Nathan Cole takes Coletech public at record valuation. I stared at the photo, professional headshot, confident smile, no trace of the man who'd made love to me in our tiny Brooklyn apartment. The article gushed about his vision, his revolutionary platform, the $2.3 billion IPO, youngest tech CEO to ring the NYSE bell. "Mama, phone!" Ethan grabbed for it, always grabbing. I locked the screen, tucked it away. But Nathan was everywhere after that. Times cover, Forbes' 30 under 30. Business Insider couldn't get enough of his meteoric rise. Cable news loved him, young, handsome, articulate, the American dream personified, they said. I learned to look away. In grocery stores, I'd turn magazines backward, change channels when his interviews came on. But Ohio wasn't far enough. His ghost lived in my children's faces. Ethan's determined jaw, Sophia's analytical gaze. The twins turned 4. I'd managed to save enough for a 2-bedroom apartment, real beds instead of cribs. My night cleaning had turned into day supervision, then office manager. Small victories that felt enormous in our little world. Then Walmart installed new self-checkout screens, his company's software, his face in the corporate video that played on loop. Making technology accessible to everyone, his recorded voice promised. I laughed, harsh and involuntary. The twins looked up from their coloring. "Why you sad, Mama?" Sophia asked, always too perceptive. "Not sad, baby. Just remembering something." Remembering what? How to explain that their father was building empires while I calculated whether we could afford name-brand cereal this week? That he was revolutionizing commerce while I taught them to tie shoes he'd never see them wear? Just grown-up stuff. That night, I allowed myself one weakness. After the twins slept, I searched his name. The results overwhelmed: interviews, profiles, speculation about his love life. Eligible bachelor Nathan Cole spotted with senator's daughter. Inside Nathan Cole's $15 million penthouse. Then I found it, a video from a tech conference, someone asking about work-life balance. "I'm married to my company," he said, laughing. "No time for distractions." Distractions, still his favorite word. I closed the laptop, went to check on the twins. They slept peacefully, unaware their father had just called them distractions to a room full of strangers who applauded his dedication. Ethan had kicked off his blanket. Sophia clutched her stuffed elephant. I fixed Ethan's blanket, kissed both their foreheads. "You're not distractions," I whispered. "You're miracles." Outside, snow began to fall. Nathan's world grew bigger every day while ours stayed small and safe. I told myself that was enough. Some nights I even believed it. The Chicago Museum of Science and Industry buzzed with excited children. I'd saved for months to bring the twins here for their 5th birthday. A real adventure, their first trip outside Ohio. Ethan bounced between exhibits while Sophia studied each display with serious concentration. "Mama, look! Rockets!" Ethan tugged me toward the space exhibition. That's when I saw the banner. Innovation Speaker Series presents Nathan Cole, CEO of Coletech. My blood turned to ice water. Of course, of fucking course. "Can we stay for the talking man?" Sophia asked, pointing to the gathering crowd. Before I could steer them away, Nathan walked onto the stage. 5 years had polished him. Expensive suit, professional haircut, confidence that comes from having the world bent to your will. He started speaking about innovation, disruption, the future belonging to the bold. The same words he'd whispered to me once, except now they were for strangers who paid to hear them. I turned to leave, but Sophia had wandered closer to the stage, drawn like a moth to flame. "Sophie, come back!" I called, but she was mesmerized. Then it happened. Nathan's eyes swept the crowd and landed on her. His next word died mid-syllable. The microphone caught his sharp intake of breath. He stared at Sophia like he'd seen a ghost, which, in a way, he had, his own eyes looking back at him from a tiny face. "Sophie, now." I reached for her hand, but Nathan was already moving, stepping down from the stage, his presentation forgotten. The crowd murmured, confused. "Wait," he called out. His voice, God, his voice still did things to my heart I hated. I picked up Sophia, grabbed Ethan's hand, but Nathan was faster, younger, unencumbered by children and diaper bags. He caught up in the lobby. "Olivia!" I kept walking. "Olivia, please! Are they—" "Don't." I spun around, my voice low and dangerous. "Don't you dare!" He stood there, this billionaire who commanded boardrooms, looking completely lost. His eyes kept moving between the twins, cataloging features, doing math. "Mama, who's that?" Ethan asked, suspicious as always of strangers. "No one," I said. "Just someone Mama used to know." Nathan flinched. "Good. They're mine." Not a question. His voice broke on the word mine. "No," I said simply. "They're mine. You made your choice. I didn't know. Because you blocked my number, changed your email, had your lawyers send cease and desist letters when I tried to reach you through your company. That last part was a lie, but he didn't know that. Let him think I'd tried. Let him carry that weight. How old are they? Old enough to not need you. Sophia watched him with those analytical eyes, so like his. You look sad, she told Nathan. My daughter, reading emotions like code. Nathan's face crumbled, the great tech visionary undone by a 5-year-old's observation. He reached into his pocket, and I tensed, ready to run. But he just pulled out a business card. Please, I know I have no right. You're right, you don't. I left the card in his outstretched hand and walked away. Daniel arrived at my apartment 3 days later with Chinese takeout and that concerned look he'd perfected over the years. He'd been my study partner at NYU, the only friend who'd stayed after I vanished to Ohio. Monthly video calls had turned into occasional visits, then regular ones after he took a job in Columbus. You look like hell, he said, unpacking containers. Thanks, really what every woman wants to hear. The twins attacked the dumplings while I picked at lo mein. I'd been jumping at every unknown number, expecting Nathan to somehow materialize despite giving him nothing to track. Spill, Daniel commanded. You've been weird since Chicago. So I told him. The words tumbled out. The speech, Nathan's face, how Sophia had looked at him with curious eyes. Daniel listened, chopsticks frozen halfway to his mouth. I knew this would happen eventually, he said quietly. Yeah, well, knowing and living it are different things. He set down his food, ran a hand through his hair, his own nervous tell. Liv, I need to tell you something. The serious tone made me look up. Daniel, my rock, my constant. He looked terrified. The twins' college funds, the anonymous donations to their preschool, the scholarship that covers their after-school program. Each word hit like a physical blow. My chest tightened. What are you saying? It was me, all of it. He stopped, started again. I've been taking care of things, behind the scenes. The room tilted. I gripped the table edge. How much? Does it matter? How much? About 40,000 over 5 years. 40,000, more money than I'd ever seen. My vision blurred, rage or tears, maybe both. You let me think, my voice cracked. I thought we were making it, that I was enough. You are enough. You're everything. That's why Don't. I stood abruptly, needing distance. Don't you dare make this about feelings. But he was already standing too, reaching for me. I love you. I've loved you since Constitutional Law Study Group. Since before Nathan, during Nathan, after Nathan. The words hung between us like a blade. All those late-night talks, the way he always showed up, how good he was with the twins. It all shifted, recolored by this admission. I never asked for your money, or your love. I know, that's why I gave both freely. Behind my back, like I'm some charity case. Like you're someone worth protecting. I laughed, brittle and sharp. From what? Reality? Newsflash, Daniel. I've been living in reality for 5 years. Alone. You were never alone. I thought I had a friend. Turns out I had a secret benefactor nursing a crush. He flinched. Good. Let everyone flinch today. Mama? Sophia appeared in the doorway, elephant clutched tight. Why are you yelling? I forced my voice calm. Just talking, baby. Go watch cartoons with Ethan. She gave Daniel a long look, that Nathan-like assessment, then patted away. You should go, I told Daniel. He gathered his coat slowly, hopefully. But hope was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not anymore, not when everyone wanted to save me except myself. Nathan found my address somehow. Of course he did. Billionaires had resources. He stood at my door at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday, rain-soaked and holding an expensive bottle of wine like a peace offering. I don't drink anymore, I said through the chain lock. I know, I didn't know what else to bring. The man who could buy anything reduced to cliché gestures. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. 5 minutes, I said, unhooking the chain. The twins are asleep. He entered my apartment like he was walking into a museum, careful, reverent. His eyes caught on everything, toys scattered on scarred hardwood, crayon masterpieces on the fridge, 2 small bikes propped in the corner. They're beautiful, he said softly. In Chicago, I couldn't. Sophia looks just like my sister did at that age. Your sister died when she was 12. He looked surprised I remembered, as if I could forget anything about the man I'd planned to marry. Nathan, what do you want? He set the wine on my coffee table, the same one I'd bought at Goodwill, painted white to hide the water stains. I want to know them. To be what? Their father? That position's been vacant for 5 years. I know, God, I know. But I was young and scared and what? Your IPO was more important. Your board of directors wouldn't approve? My father. The words hung between us. I hadn't expected that. Your father's been dead for 2 years. I saw the obituary. Nathan sank onto my couch uninvited, head in his hands. He wasn't dead when you were pregnant. He was running for Senate. A grandchild out of wedlock would have destroyed his campaign. So you destroyed us instead. He threatened you. Nathan looked up, eyes red-rimmed. Said he'd make sure you never practiced law, that he'd bury you in legal fees if you tried to claim paternity. He had a whole file. Investigators, lawyers, a PR team ready to paint you as a gold digger. My legs gave out. I sat hard on the second-hand armchair. And you just let him? I was 25 and a coward. He controlled the initial funding, said he'd pull everything if I didn't handle the situation. So you chose money. I chose fear, and I've regretted it every day since. Spare me the self-pity, Nathan. I was 22 and pregnant with twins. You think I wasn't scared? He shifted forward. I know. That's why after the IPO, I hired someone to check on you, to make sure you were okay. You spied on me? I needed to know you were safe. That they were safe? We weren't safe. We were surviving. There's a difference. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. Sorry doesn't buy diapers. Sorry doesn't hold your hair back during morning sickness. Sorry doesn't explain to 2 5-year-olds why every other kid has a daddy at preschool graduation. Each word was a scalpel, and I wielded them with surgical precision. Nathan bled quietly, taking each cut. Let me fix this, please. Some things can't be fixed. They can only be survived. The call came at 2:17 a.m., 3 weeks after Nathan's visit. Ethan had been complaining of a stomachache at bedtime, but I'd written it off as too much birthday cake at his friend's party. Mama, it hurts, he'd whimpered at midnight. By 2 a.m., he was burning with fever, clutching his right side. I knew before the ER doctor confirmed it. Appendicitis, but complicated. The appendix had ruptured. We need to operate immediately, Dr. Martinez explained. But there's something else. His blood work shows anomalies. Has anyone in your family had clotting disorders? My mind went blank. Family medical history. The black hole in my children's records. I don't know. Their father. We need that information, now. And we may need directed donor platelets if... I was already dialing Nathan's number, saved under Do Not Call in my phone. He answered on the second ring, voice thick with sleep. Olivia? Ethan's sick. The hospital needs medical history. They might need blood. Which hospital? 20 minutes later, he burst through the ER doors looking like he'd thrown on yesterday's clothes. For once, I was grateful for his money. It commanded attention, got forms signed, specialists called. My father had von Willebrand disease, he told Dr. Martinez. Type 2, my sister too. The medical team sprang into action. Nathan paced the waiting room like a caged animal while they took our son, into surgery. I sat frozen, Sophia asleep across my lap. He called me the sad man after Chicago, Nathan said suddenly. At the museum, Sophia told him I looked sad, and he remembered, called me the sad man from the museum. Don't. I couldn't handle his pain on top of mine. He's going to be okay. You don't know that. He has to be. The next 6 hours blurred. Nathan's assistant appeared with coffee, blankets, coloring books for when Sophia woke. His mother arrived at dawn, older, grayer, carrying the weight of knowledge. I didn't know, she said simply, about the threats, the investigators. I thought you'd left for money when Nathan cut you off. I had no energy for her guilt. He's 5 years old and he's never been in a hospital before. He was so scared. He's strong, she said, like his mother. When Dr. Martinez finally emerged, I couldn't read his expression. Nathan grabbed my hand, first time he'd touched me in 5 years. The surgery went well. We caught the infection in time. He'll need monitoring for the bleeding disorder, but he's going to be fine. I collapsed into Nathan, sobbing. He held me while I shook, his own tears silent but steady. Sophia woke, confused by the crowd of strangers who looked like her. Where's Ethan? He's sleeping, baby. The doctors fixed his tummy. Is the sad man crying again? Nathan laughed through his tears. Yeah, sweetheart, but they're happy tears this time. She considered this. Okay, can I have juice? Life went on, even in crisis, especially in crisis. 3 months after Ethan's surgery, we'd developed a rhythm. Nathan came for Sunday dinners, awkward affairs where he tried too hard and I forgave too little. The twins called him Nathan, not Dad, not yet. But Ethan showed him his rock collection and Sophia let him read bedtime stories. Daniel had withdrawn gracefully, sending a single text. "I'm here when you're ready to talk." I wasn't ready, might never be, but I kept the text. "We should tell them," Nathan said one evening, watching the twins build blanket forts, "about who I am. When they're ready, when I'm ready." Fair enough. He'd been patient, a new quality for him. The boy who demanded everything now waited for whatever scraps I offered. His penance, maybe, or growth. My laptop dinged with a new email. Anonymous sender, like the dozens of spam I deleted daily. But the subject line stopped me. The truth about Senator Cole's last campaign. Nathan was helping Ethan with his fort's structural integrity. I opened the email, photos, documents, recordings. Senator Cole hiring investigators to follow me. Forged medical documents claiming I was mentally unstable. A planned media campaign to discredit me if I ever came forward. Emails between him and high-powered lawyers discussing how to neutralize the threat to Nathan's future. But the last document, that shattered something in me. A contract. Nathan's signature at the bottom. He hadn't just known about his father's threats. He'd authorized them, paid for them. The timestamp showed 3 days after I told him about the pregnancy. "Mama, look! Our fort's bigger than Nathan!" Ethan's joy pierced through my fog. I closed the laptop carefully. Nathan glanced over, caught something in my expression. "Everything okay?" "Fine." The lie came easily. I'd had 5 years of practice pretending everything was fine. Later, after he'd left with promises to bring his old telescope next week, Sophia wanted to see Saturn's rings. I sat alone in the dark. The email's sender had included one line of text. "You deserve to know who you're letting near your children." Did I confront him? Blow up this fragile piece we'd built? The twins were happy, healing from the absence they'd never understood. Nathan seemed genuine in his attempts to make amends. But that contract, his signature approving the destruction of the woman he'd claimed to love. Sophia padded out in her astronaut pajamas. "Mama, can't sleep." I pulled her into my lap, breathed in her shampoo-sweet hair. "Bad dreams?" "No, good dreams. About rockets and Saturn and Nathan's telescope." "That sounds nice, baby." "Is Nathan our daddy?" The question I dreaded, delivered with 5-year-old directness. "What makes you ask that?" "He looks at us like Marcus's daddy looks at Marcus, all soft and careful, while his father plotted our burial. It's complicated, sweetheart. Everything's complicated with grown-ups," she sighed, world-weary at 5. Outside, snow began falling, the first of the season, clean and white, covering all the ugly beneath. "Is this a new beginning?" I whispered to the window. "Or just the calm before another storm?" The email waited in my laptop. The truth that could shatter everything. Tomorrow, I'd decide. Tonight, I held my daughter and watched the snow fall. "My name is Sophia Martinez, the woman who spent 10 years raising a child alone, hiding a truth the world could never imagine." But then the moment came crashing down. The doctor treating my son was the very man who once abandoned me. When he looked into my boy's eyes, his own eyes, he dropped the stethoscope. And in that instant, my secret was no longer mine to keep. Before I share my full story, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever fought through the impossible for your family. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happens next. The emergency room doors burst open, and my hands moved on autopilot. Compress the wound, check vitals, keep him alive. 10 years of nursing had taught me to push everything else aside when someone's life hung in the balance. But nothing had prepared me for the moment I looked up and saw the new chief of surgery striding toward us. Ethan Caldwell. My fingers trembled against the patient's neck as I checked for a pulse. The same hazel eyes that had once looked at me with such certainty when he'd said I wasn't mature enough for his world. The same confident stride that had carried him out of my life when I was 18 and drowning in morning sickness. "Good work on the compression," he said, his voice professional, detached. As if we'd never shared anything more than a hallway. As if he hadn't left me standing in the rain outside his apartment, begging him to reconsider. I forced myself to focus on the patient. A construction worker, crushed ribs, internal bleeding. My hands knew what to do even when my mind screamed to run. Ethan's surgical mask couldn't hide the slight furrow of his brow as he glanced at my name tag. "Sophia Martinez," he read aloud, and something flickered in his eyes. Recognition? Regret? I'd never know because I was already backing away, letting other nurses take over. "I need to check on another patient," I lied, fleeing before he could say anything else. In the break room, I gripped the edge of the sink until my knuckles went white. 10 years. I'd survived 10 years without him knowing about Daniel, about the nights I'd worked 3 jobs to afford formula, about holding our son through fevers while studying for my nursing exams by the light of my phone. I managed to avoid Ethan for exactly 3 days. Chicago General wasn't big enough to hide forever, especially when the new chief seemed determined to revolutionize every department. He was everywhere: morning rounds, staff meetings, even the cafeteria where I usually grabbed a quick lunch between shifts. "Mom, you're being weird," Daniel said over breakfast on Thursday. He pushed his cereal around, those hazel eyes, his father's eyes, studying me with 10-year-old intensity. "You keep checking your phone like something bad's gonna happen." I forced a smile. "Just work stuff, baby. Eat your cereal." "Is it about the hospital maybe closing?" Nurse Kelly said. "The hospital's not closing." I cut him off, though I wasn't sure that was true. Rumors had been flying about some medical corporation wanting to buy us out. And don't eavesdrop on adult conversations. He rolled his eyes, another gesture that was pure Ethan. Sometimes I wondered how I'd kept this secret when my son was a walking mirror of his father. The same stubborn chin, the same way of tilting his head when thinking. Even their hands were identical, long fingers that Daniel used for sketching, the way Ethan had once used them to trace my face in the dark. That afternoon, fate laughed at my attempts to hide. Daniel's school called. He'd forgotten his inhaler, and with his mild asthma, they wouldn't let him participate in PE without it. I rushed to the school, then back to the hospital where he was supposed to wait in the lobby while I finished my shift. I found them together. Daniel sat on one of the plastic chairs, animatedly explaining something on his sketchpad to the man crouched beside him. Ethan listened with genuine interest, and for a moment, I saw what we could have been. Father and son, bonding over Daniel's drawings of superheroes and spaceships. "Daniel," my voice came out sharper than intended. Both of them looked up, and the similarity hit me like a physical blow. Time to go to the break room. "But Mom, Dr. Caldwell was just..." "Now, Daniel." My son gathered his things, shooting me the look that meant we'd be having a discussion later. Ethan stood slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. "He's a talented artist," he said quietly. "How old is he?" "That's none of your business." I grabbed Daniel's backpack, my hands shaking. 10? Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. "Sophia, is he?" "Don't." I backed away, pulling Daniel with me. "Just don't." But I could see the wheels turning in his head, the mental math that every woman who's hidden this secret fears. The way his face paled as he calculated backward from Daniel's age to that last night we'd been together. The night he'd promised we'd figure everything out, right before his father had called and reminded him about the family expectations, the suitable matches, the carefully planned future that didn't include a Latina girl from the wrong side of Chicago. That night, Mom's heart monitor beeped its familiar rhythm as I sat beside her hospital bed. She'd been admitted again, her heart condition worsening with each passing month. The bills were piling up, even with my employee discount. "Mija," she whispered, her hand finding mine. "You look worried." I wanted to tell her everything. How Ethan was back, how I'd spent 10 years building walls that were crumbling after just 3 days, how Daniel had already started asking why the new doctor looked at him funny. Instead, I squeezed her hand and lied. "Just tired, Mama. Rest now." The confrontation came sooner than expected. Ethan cornered me in the supply closet, professionally, of course, asking about inventory procedures, but I could see the real question burning in his eyes. "His blood type," he said quietly, closing the door behind him. I saw it on his visitor form. B negative, same as mine. Lots of people have B negative blood. I busied myself counting gauze packages, anything to avoid his gaze. "Sophia." His hand covered mine, stopping my frantic movements. "Please, I need to know." The touch undid me. 10 years of anger, hurt, and loneliness came flooding out. "Now you need to know? Where was this need when I stood outside your apartment in the rain? When your father's secretary handed me a check and told me to take care of the problem?" He jerked back as if I'd slapped him. "What? My father did what?" "Oh, please." I laughed, but it came out broken. "Don't pretend you didn't know. $5,000 to make me go away." I threw it back in her face. "Sophia, I swear I didn't." He ran his hands through his hair, the same gesture Daniel made when frustrated. "After I left that night, my father said you'd agreed to, that you'd taken money and left town. I tried calling, but your number was disconnected." "Because I couldn't afford the bill." The words exploded out of me. I was 18, pregnant, and my parents kicked me out when I refused to give up the baby. Your baby, our son. The silence stretched between us, heavy with a decade of miscommunication and pain. Finally, Ethan sank onto a box of supplies, looking every one of his 38 years. Daniel's mine. It wasn't a question. Biologically, yes, but he's mine in every way that matters. I crossed my arms, ready to fight. I've been his mother, father, provider, and protector for 10 years. You don't get to waltz in now and, I want to know him. His voice was raw. Please, Sophia, I want to know my son. The truth has a way of spreading like wildfire in a hospital. Within days, whispers followed me down hallways. The single mom, the chief's secret baby, the decade-old scandal. But the gossip was nothing compared to Daniel's reaction when he overheard two nurses talking. I found him in the parking garage, sitting behind a concrete pillar with tears streaming down his face. Is it true? He asked, his voice so small. Is Dr. Caldwell my dad? My heart shattered. I'd planned to tell him gently, carefully, with a child psychologist present. Not like this. Never like this. Yes, I whispered, sliding down beside him. I'm so sorry, baby. I wanted to protect you. From what? From having a dad? His anger surprised us both. All the other kids have dads, and you let me think mine was dead. I never said he was dead. You never said anything. He jumped up, fists clenched. You lied. Both of you lied. He ran before I could stop him, disappearing into the evening crowd. I called everywhere. His friends, the comic book store, the park where he liked to sketch. Nothing. It was Ethan who found him 2 hours later, sitting on the hospital's roof access stairs. I watched from the doorway as they talked, unable to hear the words but seeing Daniel's shoulders shake with sobs. Ethan didn't try to hug him, he just sat there, leaving space between them, talking quietly until Daniel's tears slowed. He wants to know why, Ethan said when they finally came down. Daniel had fallen asleep against his shoulder, exhausted from crying. Why I left. Why you didn't tell him. Why we can't just fix it now. I stroked Daniel's hair, avoiding Ethan's eyes. What did you tell him? The truth, that I was young and stupid and scared. That you were brave and strong and did everything to protect him. That we both love him, even if we're still figuring out how to show it. He paused. Was that okay? I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, Veronica Hale slithered back into our lives. Ethan's ex-girlfriend, the suitable match his father had chosen, now worked as lead counsel for MedCorp, the company trying to buy our hospital. She appeared at my station during a night shift, perfectly manicured nails tapping on the counter. Sophia Martinez, the woman who trapped Ethan with a baby. I think you're lost. The psych ward is on the 3rd floor. I didn't look up from my charts. Cute. She leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to convince Ethan to support the hospital sale, or every news outlet in Chicago will know about his bastard child. Imagine the headlines. Respected surgeon's sordid past. It won't just ruin him. It'll destroy any chance your son has at a normal life. Get out! My voice shook with rage. Now! You have 1 week. She straightened her designer suit. Oh, and I have photos. Your son at school, at the park. Such a handsome boy. Be a shame if his classmates saw his family's dirty laundry splashed across social media. After she left, I ran to the bathroom and threw up. The thought of Daniel being hurt because of choices I'd made, because of secrets I'd kept, it was unbearable. But telling Ethan about Veronica's threat felt like inviting more danger into our already fragile situation. That weekend, I found myself doing something I'd sworn I'd never do, accepting Ethan's help. Mom's condition had worsened, and her cardiologist recommended a specialist who didn't take our insurance. Let me pay for it, Ethan said quietly as we stood in the hospital corridor. Please, it's the least I can do. Pride warred with desperation. Daniel sat with his grandmother, reading her favorite book aloud. I couldn't lose her too. It's a loan, I said finally. I'll pay you back. He didn't argue, just made the call. Watching him arrange the appointment, handle the insurance mess, advocate for my mother, it stirred something I'd buried deep. This wasn't the boy who'd run at the first sign of trouble. This was a man who understood consequences, who stayed when things got hard. Veronica made good on her threat. The story broke on a Tuesday morning. Hospital chief's secret love child scandal. My phone exploded with calls from reporters and photographers camped outside our apartment building. Daniel's school called. Parents were complaining, asking if that family really belonged in their district. I kept Daniel home, both of us prisoners in our tiny apartment. He pressed his face against the window, watching the circus below. This is my fault, he whispered. If I hadn't talked to Dad at the hospital, No, I pulled him close. None of this is your fault. Adults made choices, and now adults have to fix them. The buzzer rang. Another reporter, probably, but Ethan's voice came through the speaker. It's me. Can I come up? Daniel looked at me with such hope that I couldn't say no. Ethan entered carrying grocery bags and looking haggard. I brought dinner. Figured you couldn't go out? He set everything on our cramped counter, then turned to face us. I've called a press conference for tomorrow. I'm going to tell them everything. Claim Daniel publicly. Take responsibility for abandoning you both. Your career, I started, doesn't matter. He knelt in front of Daniel. You matter. Your mom matters. I've spent 10 years building a reputation, and for what? So I could impress people who'd threaten a child to get their way? He looked at me. I'm done running, Sophia. Whatever happens, we face it together. Daniel threw himself into Ethan's arms, and I saw my son's desperate need for his father. For the first time in a decade, I let myself consider that maybe we could find a way forward. That night, while Daniel slept between us on the couch, too scared to sleep alone, Ethan told me the truth about his father's machinations, the lies he'd been fed, the years he'd spent wondering what happened to me. I hired an investigator once, he admitted quietly. But you'd moved so many times, changed your number. It was like you'd vanished. I was surviving. I watched Daniel's chest rise and fall. Every move was because I couldn't afford rent. Every job change was for 50 cents more an hour. I wasn't hiding. I was drowning. His hand found mine in the dark. I'm sorry. God, Sophia, I'm so sorry. The press conference was a disaster and a triumph all at once. Ethan stood at the podium, calm and steady, as he dismantled his own carefully built image. 10 years ago, I was a coward, he said simply. I abandoned the woman I loved and the child we created because I was afraid of responsibility, of disappointing my family, of being imperfect. Sophia Martinez raised our son alone, with grace and strength I can only aspire to. I'm grateful she's allowing me the chance to know him now. But Veronica wasn't done. That afternoon, she filed an emergency custody petition claiming I was an unfit mother who'd hidden a child from his father. The court date was set for Friday, 3 days to prepare for the fight of my life. She can't win this. Ethan paced my living room, on the phone with his third lawyer of the day. No judge would. He stopped, listening, his face going pale. What? I demanded when he hung up. She has photos. You leaving Daniel alone at the hospital while you worked, him walking home by himself. They're trying to paint you as neglectful. He slumped on my second-hand couch. This is my fault. If I just stood up to my father 10 years ago. Stop. I sat beside him, exhausted beyond measure. We can't change the past. We can only protect Daniel now. It was Daniel who saved us in the end. Unbeknownst to any of us, he'd been recording videos on his phone, a diary of sorts. He showed them to Ethan's lawyer the night before court. Look, he said, pulling up video after video. Mom reading to me every night even when she's so tired she can barely keep her eyes open. Mom working on her laptop while I sleep because she's getting another degree to make more money. Mom crying in the bathroom after she thinks I'm asleep because she's scared but doesn't want me to know. The last video was from the week before. I was asleep on his bed, still in my scrubs after a 12-hour shift. Daniel's voice whispered, "My mom is a superhero. She doesn't wear a cape, but she saves people every day, and she saved me by never giving up." The custody hearing never happened. That morning, news broke that MedCorp was under federal investigation for healthcare fraud. Veronica, as their lead counsel, was implicated in covering up falsified Medicare claims. She withdrew the petition and disappeared, leaving behind a trail of scandals that made our small family drama yesterday's news. But the real victory came smaller, quieter moments. Ethan showing up for Daniel's school play, sitting beside me in the auditorium like we were any other family. Daniel's joy when Ethan taught him to throw a proper spiral in the park. My mother's tears when Ethan called her mom for the first time. "I have something to tell you," Ethan said one evening as we watched Daniel do homework at the kitchen table. "I've been offered chief positions at 3 hospitals in New York. Big money, lots of prestige." My heart sank. Of course, this had been temporary, a guilt-driven interlude in his real life. "I turned them all down," he continued quietly. "I've actually accepted a different position, director of the new community clinic on the South Side. Less money, longer hours, but," he shrugged, "it's where I'm needed, where we're needed, if you'll have me." I couldn't speak. This man who'd once run from the mere idea of responsibility was choosing the harder path, the messier life, the complicated love we'd created. "I know I can't make up for 10 years, he said, taking my hand. "But I'd like to try for the next 10, and the 10 after that. Daniel looked up from his homework, hope bright in his eyes. Does this mean you're staying? Like, for real staying? Ethan met my gaze, waiting. In his eyes, I saw the boy who'd promised me everything, the man who'd broken those promises, and the father who was trying to forge new ones. Yeah, baby, I said finally, my voice steady despite the tears. He's staying. 6 months later, I stood in our new house. Nothing fancy, just a 3-bedroom rental near the lake, watching Ethan and Daniel work on a science project at the kitchen table. My mother dozed in her chair, recovering well from her surgery. The walls held Daniel's artwork alongside photos of all of us together. It wasn't perfect. We still had counseling appointments, difficult conversations, moments when the past reared up between us. Trust, once shattered, took time to rebuild. But as Daniel laughed at something Ethan said, as my mother smiled in her sleep, as I felt the weight of a decade's struggle finally lifting, I knew we'd found something worth fighting for. Not the family we should have been, but the family we'd chosen to become. Outside, Chicago stretched toward the lake, and somewhere in that vast city was the girl I'd been, scared and alone. I wished I could tell her it would be okay, that the broken road would lead somewhere beautiful, that starting over wasn't about erasing the past, but building something new from its foundations. Mom, come see, Daniel called, and I went to join my family, ready for whatever came next. My name is Emily Carter, and I will never forget the moment when the father of the man I loved looked him in the eye and said, "If you choose her, you will lose everything." In that instant, I realized our love was not just a relationship. It was a life or death battle between love, power, and a past shrouded in darkness. Before I share my story, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you've ever overcome a painful chapter with your family. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happens next. There are memories that seem to fade with time, yet in truth they only sleep quietly in some corner of the heart, waiting for the right moment to return, vivid and whole, just as they were on the very first day. For me, it was those late afternoons on the Oregon coast, where the salty wind tangled my hair and the crashing waves beat like a second heartbeat alongside my childhood. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other's name, where every street smelled of pinewood and sea fish. And it was there, in that seemingly ordinary place, that I met Michael Hayes. Michael was the boy everyone in town knew. His father owned a large lumber company, one of the few wealthy families in the area. But to me, he was just the boy with sky-bright blue eyes and a smile that seemed to defy every barrier. I was the opposite, quiet, shy, usually sitting alone in class, sketching in my notebook instead of joining the noisy games outside. "Want to go crabbing?" Michael asked me one August afternoon. I remember shaking my head, ready to refuse, but he didn't give up. "Come on, I'll show you how. If you catch the biggest one, you can keep it for yourself." I went with him that day, and after that, there wasn't a single day we didn't see each other. We scribbled dreams in the sand and watched the tide wash them away. We climbed the rocks near the old lighthouse to shout our names into the wind, believing the gusts would carry our voices forever. Michael always said, "One day, I'm going to marry you under this lighthouse." I laughed, blushing. I was only 9, and he was 10, but something in his voice made me believe that, at least in that moment, the promise was real. That fall, Michael's parents announced they were moving to New York. I didn't understand much, only that it was so far away I couldn't imagine it. On the last day he came to my house, we sat on the porch in silence, watching the sunset. He handed me a clumsy drawing, a lighthouse standing tall by the sea with 2 children holding hands beneath it. "Keep it, so you won't forget." I nodded, too choked up to answer. But during the chaos of moving, I lost the drawing somewhere. I cried, searching everywhere, but it was gone. Just like Michael, it disappeared from my small world. The day his family left, I chased after their car until my legs burned and my lungs felt like they would burst. Michael turned back through the window, his eyes wet, his hand pressed against the glass as if he could touch me one last time. The car grew smaller, then vanished behind the trees. I didn't know then that it would be 20 years before I saw him again. The seaside town stayed as peaceful as ever, but for me, every wave carried a hollow space. I no longer went to the lighthouse. I stopped drawing dreams in the sand because the ocean only took them and never gave them back. And yet, some promises, no matter how childish, are strong enough to anchor themselves deep in memory. I carried his words with me, along with the faint ache of missing the boy with the blue eyes and the reckless smile. I never imagined that many years later, one evening in Seattle, beneath the cold white lights of a hospital, that old promise would return, powerful, unforgotten, as if it had never faded at all. There is a vast difference between growing older and truly feeling like you belong somewhere. I grew up in every literal sense of the word. I graduated, found work, learned how to pay bills, and taught myself how to comfort my own heart when night fell. But that feeling of belonging was always missing. Perhaps because from the day Michael left, I had learned how to live with emptiness, and by the time I became an adult, that emptiness had never been filled. After high school, I left my small seaside town to attend nursing school in Seattle. The big city overwhelmed me at first, yet it also offered something new, the chance to become someone else. I was no longer the timid girl in the back of the classroom, but a young woman holding responsibility in her hands, learning how to face life and death each day in the hospital where I trained. I remember the first night after a grueling 12-hour shift in the ER. I sat alone on a cold metal bench outside the building, watching ambulances come and go. My mother's voice echoed in my mind. "You have to be strong, Emily. In this world, no one can carry your pain for you." My mother had died of cancer when I was 16. Her death drew a harsh line across my life, pushing me out of childhood faster than anything else could have. My father chose alcohol over responsibility. I moved out, supporting myself with part-time jobs and modest scholarships. People often asked if I regretted choosing medicine because it was such a demanding path. But the truth was, those months of caring for my mother had planted in me the belief that I could offer someone a shred of comfort in their darkest hour. Work at the hospital was never easy. Some cases still haunt me. The newborn who didn't make it, or the middle-aged man who held my hand and wept when he learned surgery was no longer an option. In those moments, my heart clenched as if I were paying for all the memories I had left behind. During that time, I tried to build a family of my own. Daniel, a young resident, entered my life like a ray of light. He was brilliant, driven, always finding ways to make me laugh on the darkest days. After 2 years of dating, we got engaged. But the closer we came to the wedding, the emptier I felt inside. Daniel looked at me with so much love, but I couldn't find in his eyes the connection I had always longed for. "Emily, what's wrong?" Daniel asked one evening when my silence stretched too long at dinner. I forced a smile. "You're a wonderful man, Daniel. But I'm not sure I love you enough to spend the rest of my life with you." He froze. "What are you saying? We've planned everything already." I shook my head, tears blurring my vision. Plans can change, but my heart has never truly belonged to me. It was the first time I spoke aloud, the shadow that had haunted me for years. Daniel was devastated. We broke off the engagement quietly. No anger, no blame, only regret. I went back to my night shifts, to cold cups of coffee, to a small apartment that was mine alone. Slowly, I learned to live with loneliness as if it were an inseparable part of me. And yet, on certain nights, walking out of the hospital and seeing Seattle's lights shimmer across the water, I would think of Michael's blue eyes, of the lighthouse where we once made promises. And I wondered, would fate ever grant me a second chance to know what real love felt like? I had no idea the answer would come on an unexpected night when the doors of the emergency room swung open, and memories I thought buried for 20 years came rushing back, fierce and unstoppable. There are moments in life when time seems to stop. People often say that the most important things happen when you least expect them. I had lived nearly 10 years in this city, accustomed to night shifts and sudden emergencies. I thought I was strong enough to face anything, from the sting of loss to the relief of saving a life. But that night, when the ER doors burst open, I finally understood what it meant to be truly unprepared. Traffic accident, male, mid-30s, light blood loss, possible head trauma. The paramedic's voice rang out, urgent yet familiar as always. I wheeled the gurney forward, checked vitals, prepared the equipment. But the moment I leaned over the patient, something strange swept through me. His eyes were closed, his face streaked with blood and dirt, yet there was something achingly familiar. My heart pounded as if a buried memory was clawing its way back to the surface. I whispered, almost unconsciously, "Michael." The clipboard slipped from my hands, clattering against the cold tile floor. I froze, unable to believe what I was seeing. It was him, the boy from my childhood, now a grown man. His features had sharpened, matured, but the essence was unmistakable. The curve of his brow, the bridge of his nose, and above all, the feeling of recognition that seized my chest. I bent over, forcing a professional tone to mask the tremor in my voice. "We need an IV line, prep oxygen." And then his eyelids fluttered open. His gaze wavered, unfocused at first, before finally locking onto me. In that instant, the world around us dissolved. "Emily?" he murmured, his voice hoarse, fragile, but certain. My throat burned. Don't talk. You're hurt. Let me do my job. But Michael gave a faint smile, the same reckless smile I remembered. I thought I was dreaming. And if I am, please don't let me wake up. I bit my lip, fighting for composure, though my hands trembled as I adjusted the IV. Routine procedures suddenly felt impossibly difficult. When the doctors stabilized him, I stepped back, my heart racing. After nearly 20 years, here we were, not under the lighthouse of our childhood, but beneath the harsh white lights of a hospital. During my break, I sat alone in the hallway, thoughts spinning. So many questions pressed against me. How had he lived? Why was he here now? And why, after all these years, did my feelings flare so fiercely, as though no time had passed at all? When I returned to his room, Michael was more alert. His blue eyes, deeper now with age, still carried the light I remembered. I tried to find you, he said softly, as though afraid the words would disappear. I never stopped missing you. I stood motionless, caught in the storm that had erupted inside me after so long a sleep. Outside, the Seattle night pulsed on, ambulances wailing, lives rushing in and out of fragile balance. But inside that room, I knew my life was about to change course completely. And I knew too that this reunion wasn't just chance. It was the beginning of something new, a door opening to trials I could not yet see, where the past and the present were destined to collide with force. There are relationships that, no matter how long they are separated by time, ignite again as if they had never faded. After that night in the hospital, I realized the emptiness in my heart had never been about life being too harsh or me being incapable of love. It was because the one I was waiting for was Michael. Seeing him again was like unlocking a door that had been sealed for 20 years, letting the light pour in. Brilliant, overwhelming, almost too much to bear. In the days after his discharge, Michael sought me out constantly. He told me about life in New York, about working in his family's corporation, about the long business trips that left him feeling isolated amid luxury. I have everything, he confessed one evening as we sat by the river in Seattle, city lights flickering across the water. But nothing makes me feel alive, except this, sitting here with you. I stayed quiet, barely daring to believe his words. Part of me was filled with a happiness so sharp it hurt, while another part quivered with fear. The gap between us wasn't only 2 lost decades, it was an entire world apart. His family, his wealth, his status, and me, a nurse in a modest apartment in Capitol Hill. Then one day, Michael asked me to come with him to New York. I knew it wasn't just a trip, it was a test. The Hayes home rose like a fortress in the city, grand, imposing, cold. I wore the most formal dress I owned, but the moment the heavy wooden door opened and I met his mother's eyes, I knew I didn't belong. Hello, Dorothy Hayes greeted me, her smile polite, her eyes glacial. And you are a colleague of Michael's? I answered softly. My name is Emily Carter. Michael and we've known each other since childhood. For a flicker of a second, her expression wavered, but then tightened with suspicion. Soon his father appeared, Richard Hayes, tall and commanding, silver hair immaculately combed, his deep voice carrying the weight of power. Michael, he said, glancing from his son to me, what exactly is the purpose of bringing her here? Michael's hand closed firmly around mine, his voice unwavering. Dad, this is the woman I love. I want the family to know the truth. The room thickened with silence. Richard's gaze sharpened to a blade as he stepped closer, his words deliberate, cutting. You are the heir. You have obligations to this family. You cannot throw it all away for a nurse. His eyes raked over me, dismissive, and ruin your future. My blood froze, but Michael didn't falter. I don't care about money or power. All I want is to be with the woman I love. The declaration struck like an explosion in that elegant room. Dorothy clutched her chest, stunned. Richard's jaw locked as he hissed, if you choose this path, don't expect anything from the Hayes family. Forget the company, forget the inheritance, you'll lose everything. I trembled, not from fear but from knowing I had become the center of a storm. I wanted to speak, to say I sought nothing but love itself, but the words lodged in my throat. On the drive away from that house, Michael squeezed my hand tightly. His voice was steady, resolute. I know it will be hard, but I won't back down. I lost you once. I won't let it happen again. I sat in silence, watching the city lights blur past the car window, my heart a tangle of joy, dread, and the growing fear that this love was about to be tested in ways neither of us could yet imagine. And as my intuition warned, the days ahead would not only bring sweetness and passion, but also the kind of choices that cut to the bone, where Michael would have to stand against his family, and I would have to find the strength to endure a world of prejudice that seemed unbreakable. They say true love only reveals its light when tested by fire. I never believed that until the day I found myself staring at a choice that felt like life or death, not of the body, but of trust, of faith, of the future itself. After that tense encounter with Michael's parents, I knew things would be hard. What I didn't expect was how swiftly Richard Hayes would strike. Just days later, Michael received a call from his father. "You have 24 hours," Richard declared flatly. "End it with her or leave this family behind. No money, no position, no inheritance. The choice is yours." When Michael told me, I felt as though the air had been punched out of my lungs. I looked into his eyes and saw the war raging inside him. I loved him so much that part of me wanted to set him free. "Don't do this because of me," I whispered. "I can't bear to watch you lose everything for someone like me. I'm not worth it." He cut me off, his voice steady, unyielding. "Emily, you are everything. I've lived long enough to know that wealth can't replace happiness. If I have to choose, I choose you." His words sent a shiver through me, equal parts joy and terror. I knew the cost of that choice. Michael had grown up with every comfort, every luxury I'd never dared to dream of. And me? I was just a nurse, surviving on long shifts and a modest paycheck. The next day, Michael packed his things from the pristine, high-rise apartment his family had given him. I went with him, folding tailored suits and wrapping up expensive trinkets, each object suddenly hollow. "It's funny," he said as he dropped his Rolex into a box. "I used to think this watch was proof of success. Now it's just metal. It means nothing if my life is empty." We moved into a shabby apartment in Brooklyn, with peeling walls and windows that groaned in the wind. But for Michael, it felt like liberation. "At least here," he said, "I don't have to live by someone else's rules." I wanted to believe him, yet the weight of reality pressed hard. Endless bills, mounting expenses, and the pitying looks from my colleagues when they learned I was dating a former billionaire who now had no job, no fortune. And then Daniel reappeared. One evening, after my shift, I found him waiting outside the hospital. "Emily," he said gently, "I heard about you. You don't have to live like this. I can give you stability, a secure future. You don't have to suffer." My heart twisted. Behind me was the past I had walked away from. Before me stood the man who once loved me faithfully. But inside me, the truth was unshakable. Michael was still the only one I couldn't leave. When I returned to our tiny apartment, I found him sitting on the floor among half-unpacked boxes, exhaustion on his face but fire still alive in his eyes. He looked up and asked quietly, "Do you regret this?" I sat down beside him, took his worn hand in mine, the hand roughened by days of searching for work with no success. "If love is a choice, then I choose you, even if it costs me every ounce of safety." In that moment, I knew we had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. The road ahead would be far harder, but it was only now that our love would face its truest test. Outside, the city roared on, cars racing past, oblivious to two people who had just dared to defy an empire. I didn't know what the future would bring, but one thing was certain. This was only the beginning of a long battle, not only against the Hayes family, but against the fears and limits within ourselves. People like to believe that love can conquer all, but only when faced with harsh reality do you learn that love isn't magic. It's a battle fought day by day, hour by hour, against the smallest of things, an unpaid bill, a cutting remark, a stranger's cold stare. After Michael left his family, we moved into a cramped apartment in Brooklyn. The walls were cracked, the roof leaked when it rained, and the traffic outside kept the nights restless. To me, it was nothing new. I had grown up in scarcity. But for Michael, this was another world entirely. He began looking for work, dressing in pressed shirts and ties each morning, heading out with hope. Yet nearly every door slammed shut before he could step through. I knew why. Richard Hayes wasn't content with disinheriting him. He quietly made sure no company in New York would give Michael a place. One evening, after a double shift, I came home to find Michael at the kitchen table, a pile of rejection letters before him. He said nothing, just crushed one in his fist and let out a bitter laugh. "I used to believe I had talent," he sighed, "but maybe I was only ever my father's shadow." I sat beside him, took his hand. "No, Michael, you can start over. It'll be hard, but you're not alone." He looked at me then, exhaustion burning in his eyes, and my heart ached. The months that followed were relentless. We lived off my modest paycheck. I picked up overtime, worked back-to-back night shifts, sometimes stumbling home after 12 hours only to return again after a few hours of broken sleep. My body ached, but worse than fatigue was the sting of judgment. In the break room, I once overheard colleagues whisper, "He used to be a Hayes. Now look, sitting at home while she carries it all." From wild stallion to workhorse, who'd have thought? I pretended not to hear, but each word carved deep. One afternoon, leaving work, I spotted Michael on a busy street corner. He was selling coffee to passers-by, sleeves rolled, sweat dripping down his face. People hurried by, never guessing this man had once looked out over Manhattan from a glass tower. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, tears spilling. I pitied him, loved him, and hated myself for doubting whether love alone could bear such weight. At night, lying beside him, I found myself torn. I loved Michael deeply, but the exhaustion, the uncertainty gnawed at me. Again and again the thought crept in. If he had chosen his family over me, would he be happier now? And would I be suffering less? Then came a revelation that cut sharper than any exhaustion. In a casual conversation with an older colleague, I learned that the Hayes Corporation had once enacted policies that ruined lives, including my own family's. Their deals and cold decisions had driven my father into debt, despair, and eventually into the bottle that destroyed him. The ground beneath me shifted. Michael and I were bound not only by childhood love, but also by a hidden wound, a quiet enmity I had never known. That night in our dark little apartment, I lay still, listening to Michael's steady breathing. And I wondered, was this love our destiny, or merely a cruel spiral, a trap spun by fate long before either of us could choose? People say truth sets you free, but sometimes truth is the very weight that makes you collapse. For years, I carried the emptiness of losing my mother, the shame of a father drowning in alcohol. I thought it was just my family's cruel fate. Until the missing piece appeared, bearing the name Hayes. That evening, after a long shift, I lingered with Linda, an older nurse soon to retire. She looked at me with sympathy, then sighed. "Emily, did you know the Hayes Corporation once bought out that small lumber mill in your coastal town? They forced prices down, broke contracts, left dozens of families in ruin. My friend's brother lost his job then. And your father? Well, that's when he began to spiral." I went numb. Memories came flooding back, my mother's tired eyes, my father's bottles, the house stripped bare piece by piece. I whispered to myself, barely audible, "So, it was them." That night, I couldn't sleep. One question looped endlessly in my mind. If Michael's family was part of the reason mine was destroyed, then what was our love? Salvation? Or a tragedy written from the start? The next day, I confronted Richard Hayes. His office loomed as cold and imposing as ever. My voice trembled, but I forced it steady. "Do you remember the coastal town in Oregon? My family lost everything because of your corporation." He looked up, his eyes sharp as glass. Then, unexpectedly, he sighed, like a man carrying decades of burden. "You think you're the only one who lost? I sacrificed my life to build this empire. Yes, I made that decision. And your father was not the first casualty." I froze. There was no remorse in his voice, only bitterness. "Why hide it from Michael? Why let us suffer for your sins?" Richard's silence stretched before he rasped, "Because I knew. If the two of you ever found each other, Michael would choose you over this family. I couldn't allow history to repeat." The ground shifted beneath me. He hadn't just scarred my childhood. He had deliberately torn me and Michael apart from the start. When I returned to our apartment, Michael noticed immediately. "Emily, what's wrong? Have you been crying?" I stared at him, my heart splintering. "Michael, did you know your father played a part in destroying my family?" His face drained of color, pain flooding his eyes. "No. Are you certain?" I nodded, tears streaming. He sank into a chair, burying his head in his hands, speechless. In that moment, the gap between us became more than family opposition. It was a chasm of brutal truth. And then, Daniel appeared. He handed me a coffee, his voice gentle. "Emily, I've said it before. You don't have to live like this. You could have another life. No past dragging you down, no war between love and hate." I met his eyes, and in them was safety, stability, a way out. For the first time, I felt myself waver. That night, Michael stumbled upon us talking. His eyes flickered with hurt, suspicion. He said nothing, asked nothing, just turned and walked into the darkness. I stood frozen, realizing the real storm had finally begun. And this time, I wasn't sure love alone would be strong enough to hold us together. There are wounds that never seem to heal, until one accepts that scars too are part of who we are. Love, like life itself, is never flawless. It is made of fragments, jagged edges, and broken pieces. And precisely because of that, it becomes something worth holding on to. After the night Michael saw me with Daniel, silence grew between us like a canyon. He avoided me, I drowned in guilt. I hadn't betrayed him, but Daniel's presence had reopened the deepest cracks in my heart. It wasn't just love I began to doubt, it was myself. A few days later, I returned to my hometown, to the lighthouse that had witnessed the beginning of everything. Sitting on the sand, listening to the waves, I let memory wash over me. My mother's gentle face, my childhood dreams, Michael's smile at 10 years old. And I understood then, true love isn't the absence of pain. It is the choice to keep walking forward, even knowing the path will be rough. When I looked up, Michael was there, out of breath, weary, but his eyes burning with a light I hadn't seen in years. "I searched everywhere," he said, voice hoarse. "I can't let it end like this." Tears blurred my vision. "Michael, I know the truth now. Your father destroyed my family. How can we build a future on ruins?" He fell silent, then stepped forward, kneeling in front of me. "I can't change the past, but I can choose the future, and I choose you. Even if you hate me, even if you leave, my heart has belonged to you all along." In that moment, I didn't see the heir of an empire, nor the man stripped of it. I saw only a human being, flawed, fragile, yet undeniably in love with me. We held each other close as the sea wind howled past the lighthouse, and I knew the choice had already been made. Not between hatred and forgiveness, but between fear and love, and I chose love. Not long after, Richard Hayes fell gravely ill. In his final days, he summoned Michael. His voice was frail, but his words still carried weight. "I once loved so much that I turned against my own family. I lost everything. That regret made me cruel to you. I didn't want you to repeat my mistakes. But perhaps I was wrong." Michael wept as he held his father's hand. When Richard closed his eyes for the last time, he left behind not just an empire, but a hollow space in his son's heart. His funeral was quiet. I stood by Michael's side, not as an outsider, but as part of his story. For the first time, the Hayes family did not look at me with disdain. Perhaps grief had taught them what power never could, that love is neither bought nor commanded. Months later, we held a small wedding beneath the Oregon lighthouse. No grandeur, no spectacle, only the people who truly loved us. In a simple dress, I held Michael's hand as he whispered, "I kept my promise. It took years, but we made it here." Through tears, I smiled. "And this time, I won't let the waves take it away." Our life was not one of wealth. Michael started over with a small recycled wood company. I continued nursing, caring for patients as I always believed was my calling. There were hard days, unpaid bills, and nights of exhaustion. But every evening, sitting beside him in our modest home, I knew I had found happiness. Looking back, I realized love is not a fairy tale. It is wounds and tears, forgiveness and resolve. Above all, it is the daily choice to stay, again and again. I chose Michael, as he chose me, and that was the greatest victory of my life. I am Evelyn Carter, and I will never forget the moment my ex-husband stood in a glittering room, raised his champagne glass, and mocked. "She's 46, expired. Who would ever want a woman like that?" In that instant, the whole world turned to see me as a loser. But what they didn't know was that very moment lit the fuse for his downfall, and marked the beginning of my return. Before I share my story, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Hit the like button and subscribe if you've ever overcome a painful chapter in your life. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happens next. They say the real pain doesn't come from being abandoned. It comes from that moment when you realize the person who once swore to protect you is the very one who drags you into the spotlight to humiliate you. I used to think I was strong, that after the divorce I could quietly retreat, preserving what little dignity I had left. But that night, in a room glittering with crystal light and the extravagant laughter of Manhattan's elite, everything I had tried so hard to protect dissolved into smoke. The fundraising gala was held at the Plaza Hotel, where sweeping gowns brushed the floor and tailored tuxedos felt like an unspoken uniform. I stood in the corner, silently lifting a glass of champagne, trying to blend into the glamorous painting around me. After 19 years of marriage, this was the first time I'd attended such an event without the title of Richard Hale's wife. Richard entered as though the room belonged to him, tall silver streaks in his hair, his tailored suit cut perfectly to fit a man who carried power like a second skin. At his side was Samantha, a model nearly 2 decades younger than me, her crimson lips and triumphant gaze impossible to miss. I knew that look well. I had worn it once myself, when I was younger, and still believed love could withstand the cruelty of the world. Richard's laugh echoed, strong, magnetic. He clapped the shoulders of investors, raised his glass in toasts. Then, deliberately, his voice rang louder than necessary. "You know," Richard said, his tone crisp and performative, "I've freed myself from old burdens. Evelyn, I wish her the best. But let's be honest, who really wants to start over at 46? That's the real tragedy." Laughter rippled through the circle of men around him. A few women my age turned away, their expressions tight with discomfort but silent all the same. Samantha only smiled sweetly, gripping Richard's arm like a declaration of victory. I heard every word. No one realized how close I stood, hidden just behind the white floral curtain by the buffet. It felt as though my skin had been stripped bare, as though the years I had sacrificed for his career and reputation were erased in a single sentence. I wanted to leave at once, but my legs felt anchored to the polished floor. When I finally managed to move, a hand caught the sleeve of my dress. It was Clara, my closest friend since college. Her eyes burned with a mix of anger and sorrow. "You heard everything?" she whispered. I nodded, swallowing back tears. "I suppose that's how he wants people to remember me." Clara squeezed my hand firmly. "No, you are not a tragedy. He will pay for his arrogance." I didn't answer. All I wanted was to escape, from the blinding lights, the jazz music, the whispers filled with pity and curiosity. Stepping onto Fifth Avenue, the November wind cut cold against my face. I clutched my coat tighter, watching the city lights blur through my tears. That night, I returned to my small Brooklyn apartment. No luxury, no view of Central Park. Only the distant rumble of subway trains. I sat by the window, poured myself a glass of wine, and let the tears fall. Not because I still loved him, but because I had just been erased from my own life. But there was one thing Richard didn't know. Silence does not mean surrender, and sometimes humiliation is only the spark that ignites a fire the mocker never expects. My story didn't end that night. In truth, it was only the first crack in the wall of arrogance Richard believed unbreakable. And from that crack, things I had never imagined would begin to surface, leading me down a path I never thought I would take. There are voids that no amount of money or well-meaning words can fill. People may call it freedom, but for me, the first days after divorce were nothing more than a heavy silence. No more lavish parties, no more schedules packed with my husband's business meetings. I suddenly had too much time and no idea what to do with it. My Brooklyn apartment was small, 2 bedrooms and a living room that overlooked a busy street. In the mornings, sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting light on bare walls. I often sat for hours by the window, watching people hurry to work, listening to the honk of cars, the rumble of the subway below. The world kept moving, while I remained stuck among the shards of a broken marriage. At first, I simply withdrew. I avoided mirrors, even the sight of my own reflection. I stacked the kitchen counter with old books, unfinished art research manuscripts I had once dreamed of completing. I read, took notes, abandoned them, and repeated the cycle, pretending I still had some sense of purpose. But the truth was, I felt invisible. At night, I opened bottles of cheap wine and sat alone with my thoughts. Sometimes I left the TV running until morning, not to watch, but to drown out the deafening silence of the apartment. Texts from my son, away at college in Boston, came late and brief. "Busy with exams? You okay, Mom?" I never wanted to burden him, so I replied with the same words every time. "I'm fine. Focus on school." Clara stopped by a few times, bringing food and a little too much concern. One evening, as I closed a book, she sighed. "Evelyn, you can't go on like this. You have to step outside. You have to let people see that you still exist." I gave a bitter smile. "What do I have to show? A middle-aged woman left behind for someone half her age?" Clara set her coffee cup down with a thud. "No, you're Evelyn Carter, the woman who once had a brilliant future in art, the lecturer who lit up her students' imaginations. You are not his shadow." I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to believe her, but another part whispered, if I truly had worth, would Richard have discarded me so easily? On rainy days, I walked the neighborhood. I watched couples holding hands, mothers chasing after children, old men lingering outside cafes. I felt like a ghost drifting through their lives, unnoticed, irrelevant. And in that silence, I began to wonder if Richard's cruel words at the gala might have been true, that at my age, I had already expired. But there was something strange. The deeper I sank into sorrow, the more I felt a quiet rage flickering inside me, angry at him for humiliating me, angry at myself for believing my life could only revolve around a man, angry at the years I had let slip away, forgetting who I once was. I didn't yet know what to do with that anger. But in those long, sleepless nights, with the sound of traffic outside and yellow lights streaming through the window, I began to realize one truth. I could not live like this forever. Whether I wanted to or not, I had to change. And then, by chance, the first door opened. A letter I almost threw away. A single line that stirred something in me after months of numbness. I didn't know where it would lead, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a reason to step outside my small apartment. There are moments in life that seem small, almost trivial, yet they open an entirely new path. Not the grand decisions, but a letter, a phone call, or even a name that reminds you of who you used to be. For me, that moment came on a gray, rainy afternoon when I finally tore open an envelope I had left untouched for weeks. The cream-colored envelope bore the logo of a private art foundation in Washington, D.C. I was ready to toss it into the trash with the rest of the junk mail, but my eyes caught the words, Symposium on Art and Digital Preservation, a conference gathering, scholars, collectors, and technologists. I hesitated, torn between the inertia that had consumed me and the flicker of curiosity I thought I'd lost. I brought the letter to Clara. She skimmed it, then looked up, her eyes alight. Evelyn, you have to go. This is your chance to step back into the world where you belong. I frowned. Go for what? To sit in a corner, listening to people talk about things I left behind 20 years ago? No, Clara said firmly. Go to remember what you loved. Go to find yourself again. The next morning, I packed a plain gray dress, not the designer kind once chosen to fit the image of a businessman's wife, but the one I had worn defending my thesis years ago. I tucked a few notebooks and pens into my bag, as if to reassure myself that I was still a scholar, however long I had abandoned that role. Washington greeted me with the bite of early winter. The symposium was held in an old limestone building, modest and quiet, no reporters, no flashing cameras. I chose a seat at the back of the hall, planning to listen quietly and slip away unnoticed. But then something unexpected happened. The final speaker took the stage, Dr. Nathaniel Cross. I had long known his name, the founder of a multi-billion-dollar cybersecurity firm, famous for his secrecy, rarely seen in public. Rumor had it he owned one of the largest private art collections in America. He didn't speak with fanfare or rehearsed rhetoric. He walked slowly, his deep voice steady, reflecting on art as a form of data, on the collector's duty not to possess but to preserve. The way he spoke pulled me back to the lecture halls of my youth, where I once lost myself in debates over the tiniest details of an old painting. When the quanda began, I don't know what gave me the courage, but my hand lifted. My voice trembled as I asked, "Excuse me, but has anyone attempted to analyze the pigments in the underpainting of the disputed work? Sometimes a single material can determine authenticity." The room went silent. Nathaniel looked up at me, his gaze sharp yet free of judgment. A faint smile touched his lips. That's an insightful observation. I believe no one has approached it that way yet. Thank you. My heart pounded, my face flushed, but for the first time in years, I felt visible again. My voice mattered. When the session ended, I was gathering my notes to leave when a staff member approached with a small wrapped book. Inside was Pigments of the 18th Century, a rare edition I had once searched for endlessly, along with a handwritten note. Miss Carter, your perspective left an impression on me. If you have time, I would like to invite you to my private gallery for further conversation. NC. I stood still, the book trembling in my hands, not because he was a billionaire, but because, for the first time in months, someone saw me not as an ex-wife, but as a mind, an individual of worth. That night, back in my modest hotel room, I opened the book and breathed in the familiar scent of old paper. I knew then that a door had opened, and if I found the courage to walk through, it could lead me into a chapter of life I had never dared to believe was still possible. Perhaps nothing awakens a person more than being truly listened to. Not out of politeness, but because someone sees something in you worth hearing. After months of being dismissed, that feeling was like a rush of fresh air filling my lungs, making me want to breathe deeply and believe I still existed. 2 days after the symposium, I accepted Nathaniel's invitation. A sleek black car waited outside my hotel, carrying me to a red brick building tucked away on a quiet street near Georgetown. There was no sign, no ostentatious security, just a heavy steel door that opened as we arrived. Inside, it felt like I had stepped into another world. Not the ostentatious glamour of Chelsea's commercial galleries, but a private sanctuary. Soft lighting, each painting given space to breathe, inviting quiet contemplation. I recognized works I had only ever seen in books. An Edward Hopper, rare sketches by Georgia O'Keeffe, and, in the corner, a haunting Rothko. Nathaniel stood beside me, hands in his coat pockets, his gaze more on my reaction than the art itself. "I don't bring many people here," he said. "I dislike spectacle. For me, art isn't for display. It's for dialogue." I turned to him, unsettled. "Then why invite me?" A faint smile curved his lips. "Because I believe you can hear what art is trying to say in a way most people cannot." We moved slowly from room to room. Nathaniel never lectured like a collector eager to flaunt his possessions. He asked questions instead. "What do you see in Hopper's light? Loneliness, or a strange kind of peace?" At first I stumbled over my words, but then I let myself drift with the images. I spoke of small details, layers of paint, brushstrokes that seemed to tremble. Nathaniel listened, nodding, sometimes adding a quiet remark, never dismissing or correcting. It had been so long since I felt seen, not just with eyes, but with respect for my mind. Later, in the reading room lined with rare books, he poured me a cup of hot tea. "Evelyn," he said slowly, his voice low and deliberate, "I think you've left the best part of yourself buried for too long. The sharpness you carry, I don't often find it in the people I meet." I tightened my grip on the cup. I let it die. Marriage, life, it swept me away. "Not die," he interrupted softly. "Just hidden, like dust on a painting. Brush it away, and the colors shine again." The words caught in my throat. I couldn't respond, so I let silence settle between us. But in that silence, I felt something stirring awake. That day, I left the gallery with lighter steps. The Washington winter air was still biting cold, but for the first time in months, I didn't feel swallowed whole by darkness. On the ride back to the hotel, I caught my faint reflection in the car window. The woman staring back at me could return. I didn't know where this path would lead, but at least I knew I had taken the first steps. What I couldn't foresee was how those steps would lead me straight into the most dangerous terrain, where ambition, love, and retribution intertwined, pulling me into a storm greater than anything I had ever faced before. People often imagine revenge as something explosive, shouts, slaps, scenes of fury, but the harshest blows usually arrive in silence. It isn't the spectacle of rage, but the quiet shift of a story, the moment the world turns its gaze on the arrogant and sees them instead with pity and scorn. I never set out to retaliate against Richard, but he himself planted the seeds of his downfall. After my visits to Nathaniel's gallery, whispers began to surface. Washington is not a city where secrets survive, especially when they involve a name like Nathaniel Cross. Rumors spread that the reclusive billionaire had grown close to a woman no one expected, Richard Hale's ex-wife. I first heard it from Clara. "Do you know your name is turning up in a few gossip columns?" she said over the phone one morning. I sighed, setting my coffee down. "Let me guess. They're saying I've latched on to an old rich man?" Clara hesitated for a beat before replying, "Yes, but it won't stop there. You know how they love the story of the middle-aged woman who finds a shortcut back to the spotlight." I stayed quiet. Even knowing it was only chatter, it stung. I never sought the spotlight. All I wanted was to be heard again, to live in the part of myself I had once abandoned. But the undercurrent swelled. One winter morning, Clara burst into my apartment, a magazine clutched in her hand. She dropped it onto the table, her eyes shining. "Evelyn, look." On the cover was a black and white photo. I almost didn't recognize myself. No heavy makeup, my hair loose, a candid smile caught mid-conversation. Beside me, Nathaniel looked at me with unmistakable warmth. Bold letters declared, "The scholar who stole the heart of America's most private billionaire." I froze. This wasn't tabloid trash. It was a respected publication, one that profiled only people of substance. The article was long, recounting my academic past, the unfinished research, the shared language Nathaniel and I found in art. No cheap embellishment, no condescension. They wrote about me as an individual, not a shadow. Clara squeezed my hand, whispering, "Do you see? The story has finally changed." Meanwhile, in Manhattan, Richard's anger boiled over. He called friends, scoffing, "Nonsense. She found some bookish professor to parade around." But when his eyes landed on the name Nathaniel Cross, I knew he must have choked on the realization. Nathaniel wasn't a nobody. He was a man whose influence could unsettle even the largest Wall Street deals. For me, the coverage was both a balm and a burden. I had never wanted to be center stage, yet now I couldn't escape the scrutiny. I wasn't sure I was ready for the silent war that seemed to be drawing me in without my consent. That night, I stood before the mirror in my small apartment, studying my reflection under the yellow light. The woman staring back was different, not younger, not necessarily stronger, but clearer, as though my story was no longer being written by someone else. I knew then that life would no longer be quiet. What had just unfolded was only the prelude, and beyond the swell of public opinion, a greater storm loomed, one that could engulf both Richard and me. The only difference was this time, I had learned how to swim. Downfall rarely happens in a single dramatic instant. More often, it begins with hairline fractures, tiny, silent cracks that spread until the entire wall can no longer hold. For Richard, those cracks appeared right after the magazine story about Nathaniel and me, but he was too arrogant to notice, or pretended not to. The news reached me through an old friend in real estate. She called one late afternoon, her voice laced with both surprise and a hint of satisfaction. "Evelyn, did you hear? Some of Richard's biggest partners are uneasy. Meetings are being postponed. People are starting to wonder if he's still a safe investment." I sat quietly on the wooden chair in my kitchen, conflicted, stirred, unsettled, yet chilled. I hadn't sought revenge, but I couldn't deny that hearing this felt like justice had finally come knocking. As I expected, Richard maintained the facade of invincibility. The financial press still photographed him and Samantha at glittering openings, his wide smile and tailored suits unshaken. In one interview, he declared, "My private life has no bearing on my work. I remain focused on major upcoming projects. The market knows who I am." But behind closed doors, the truth was different. Clara's source confided that at a private meeting, one longtime investor had asked bluntly, "Richard, if you can't control your personal image, why should we trust you to manage a multi-billion-dollar project?" I could almost picture the flicker of tension across his face in that crowded room. In finance, reputation isn't a luxury, it's currency. And once that currency is devalued, collapse can be frighteningly swift. From the sidelines, I observed quietly. Sometimes Nathaniel would bring it up, his tone calm, almost detached. "This world runs on confidence," he said. "When people sense instability, they withdraw. They don't wait for an official reason." I asked him softly, "Do you think what's happening to Richard is because of me?" He looked at me intently, his eyes luminous under the warm light. "No, he did this to himself. You are merely the mirror reflecting what he tried to hide." His words left me both relieved and shaken. I had carried the guilt that my presence in Nathaniel's life was the trigger for Richard's unraveling. But in truth, that empire had been rotting from within all along. Rumors multiplied. A bank rescinded a credit line. A construction conglomerate froze negotiations. Then came the heaviest blow, the withdrawal of the lead investor from a flagship midtown skyscraper, the very project Richard had staked his reputation on. The explanation was terse, concerns over governance and corporate image. I read the headline on my phone in my small Brooklyn apartment, my fingers trembling slightly against the screen. This was Richard's greatest fear, not the loss of money, but the loss of face. He had built his entire life around being seen as the perpetual victor, and now that image was splintering for all to see. But I also understood something else. A wounded animal is most dangerous. Richard was not the kind of man to concede defeat quietly. He would lash out, claw for survival, seek to reclaim control. And in that desperation, I knew he would come for me. Not out of love, but to staunch the bleeding of his pride. The door to an inevitable confrontation had opened. And for the first time in years, I felt strong enough not to run. There are confrontations we don't wish for, yet know are inevitable. When the past refuses to stay buried, it will find its way into the present, no matter how many walls we build. For Richard, collapse wasn't just about losing assets or power. It was the humiliation of seeing me, the woman he once demeaned, now regarded with respect. And that was something he could not endure. The first call came one evening. His voice was hoarse, hurried. "Evelyn, we need to talk. Don't hang up. I want to apologize." I paused for a few seconds, then answered flatly, "There's nothing left to say between us." He called again and again, leaving long messages that wavered between regret and threats. "You think you can escape me? Have you forgotten what we built together?" I deleted them, but I knew Richard would not stop. Then, on a rainy night, he appeared at my Brooklyn apartment door. When I cracked it open, I barely recognized him. His suit was rumpled, hair disheveled, eyes wild. "Evelyn, please hear me," he pleaded, his voice trembling. "Everything's collapsing. I've lost almost everything, but you can save me." I looked at him, calmer than I would have imagined. "Save you? How? You can tell the press that things between you and Cross aren't what they think, that I'm still your man." He stepped closer, desperation lacing his tone. "I need to restore trust with my investors. All it takes is you speaking up." I cut him off, my voice cold. "You honestly believe my worth is still in being your prop? Your tool?" He froze for a moment, then shifted tactics. If you won't help, I'll have to remind people of what you'd rather keep buried. Don't forget, I know about the assets once under your name. If it comes out that I was really the one controlling them, you'll be dragged into legal trouble. Anger surged through me, but before I could respond, Clara emerged from the kitchen. She slammed a folder onto the table in front of him. You're threatening the wrong person, Richard. These documents prove you forged signatures and committed fraud to strip Evelyn of her assets. If necessary, we'll take this straight to court. Richard's face drained of color. He tried to mask it with defiance, but panic flickered in his eyes. He growled, "She can't win. You can't fight me." For the first time in years, I met his gaze without fear. No, Richard, you've already lost yourself. All I've done is refuse to let you destroy me anymore. At last, he turned and left, his figure staggering into the rain. I shut the door behind him, overcome by a strange sense of release. It wasn't joy nor triumph, but closure. Yet it wasn't over. Clara placed a steady hand on my shoulder, her tone grave. We need to prepare. What he's done could trigger a full investigation. And when the courts open their doors, Richard won't be the only one exposed. I sank into the chair, drawing in a long breath. I understood then. The real battle still lay ahead. Not just Richard's reckoning, but my own trial. Whether I had the strength to step into the light, to face the public, and no longer hide in silence. They say justice comes slowly, but when it does, it carries the power to cleanse years of silence and bitterness. For me, victory wasn't watching Richard bow his head in court. It was the moment I stepped onto the witness stand, faced the past I had long avoided, and spoke the truth in my own voice. The trial stretched on for weeks. The press reported every detail. Richard stood accused of financial fraud and asset misappropriation through a web of legal tricks. His lawyers tried to paint him as a misunderstood man, but the documents Clara uncovered tore apart that facade. On the day I testified, the courtroom was hushed. I remember clearly the sight of Richard across the aisle. He sat there in an expensive suit, but his eyes held no arrogance. When I was asked about the years I'd sacrificed, my career, my identity, I allowed myself a faint smile and answered, I gave up more than people will ever know, but the greatest loss wasn't financial. It was becoming invisible, reduced to nothing more than a shadow that someone else used to build their power, and I will never let that happen again. The court ruled. Richard was guilty of fraud and barred from leading any company for the next 10 years. The press called it the irreversible collapse of the Hale Empire. Samantha had already disappeared from his side, leaving behind cryptic captions on social media about finding new freedom. I didn't celebrate. Instead, I returned to my small apartment, brewed a cup of tea, and sat by the window. Outside, the world buzzed with noise, but within me was a stillness I had never known. Justice doesn't erase the past. It only gives us the chance to write the next chapter with steadier hands. Months later, I officially accepted the role of executive director of the Carter Cross Foundation, the art research and preservation fund Nathaniel had established. For the first time in years, I entered a crowded room without shrinking into a corner. I stood before the audience and introduced our first exhibition, Palimpsest: Hidden Layers of Memory. I spoke of art as a manuscript overwritten, of how what seems erased still lingers, waiting to be revealed. When I stepped down from the stage, Nathaniel handed me a glass of champagne and murmured, "You haven't just returned, you found yourself." I smiled, no words needed. For the first time in 20 years, I truly believed I was no longer anyone's shadow. That evening, as I left the gallery, I saw my son waiting outside. He embraced me tightly and whispered, "Mom, I'm proud of you." Tears stung my eyes. I realized then that this journey had never been only about standing against Richard. It was also about proving to those I loved that I had never disappeared. I only needed time to find my voice again. That was the true victory. Not because Richard had fallen, but because I had risen. And as I looked toward the future, I knew this journey was not ending. It was only just beginning, a new life written entirely by me. My name is Emily Carter, and this is the story I've kept hidden for 7 years. The night my daughter collapsed on stage, all I could do was hold her fragile body and pray she kept breathing. But when the ER doors swung open, the man who rushed in to save her was the very same one who once walked away from me. And when his eyes locked on hers, eyes identical to his own, he whispered, "My God, she's mine." In that moment, my world shattered. Before I share the rest of my story, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you've ever faced a moment that turned your whole life upside down. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happens next. The music stopped mid-note. One moment, my Lily was standing on that little wooden stage, her voice pure as morning light singing Twinkle, Twinkle. The next, she crumpled like a paper doll, her white dress pooling around her small body. I don't remember running. I don't remember screaming. I only remember the weight of her in my arms, too light, always too light, and the terrible stillness of her chest. 6 years I'd carried the secret. 6 years of doctor visits paid in cash, of lies about why her father wasn't around, of watching her sleep and counting each precious breath. The heart murmur they'd found when she was 2 had grown into something darker, something that stalked us through playground games and bedtime stories. "Ma'am, we need to get her to Dallas Children's immediately." The paramedic's hands were gentle but firm as he tried to take her from me. I couldn't let go. Wouldn't. The ambulance ride blurred past in a haze of sirens and medical terms I'd memorized but never wanted to hear. Cardiac arrhythmia. Decreased oxygen saturation. Possible structural abnormality. Each word a stone in my chest. Dallas Children's Hospital loomed before us, all glass and steel and promises I couldn't afford to believe. They wheeled her away from me at the emergency entrance, and I followed like a ghost, my sneakers squeaking against the polished floors. "We need the pediatric cardiac surgeon," someone called out. "Page Dr. Hayes immediately." The world tilted. Hayes, no, not here, not now. But the universe has a cruel sense of timing, because the doors swung open and there he was. 7 years older, wearing scrubs instead of the Yankees cap he'd loved, but unmistakably Daniel. His hair was shorter now, touched with early silver at the temples. The laugh lines I used to trace with my fingertips had deepened into something more serious. He moved with the same confident grace that had once made me believe in forever, issuing orders with an authority that made nurses jump. Then his eyes found mine across the chaos, and for one heartbeat we were 22 again, planning a future that would never come. Recognition flickered, then confusion, then something I couldn't name. But he was already turning to Lily, professional mask sliding into place. His hands, those hands that had once held my face like I was precious, now moved over my daughter's chest, checking, assessing. "How long has she had the murmur?" His voice was all business, but I caught the slight tremor underneath. "Since she was 2, my own voice came out strangled. He glanced up sharply, started to speak, then his gaze caught on Lily's face, really looked, and I saw the exact moment the ground shifted under his feet, the way his hands stilled, the quick intake of breath, the dart of his eyes from her face to mine and back again. "We need to run tests immediately." Daniel's voice had gone carefully neutral, but his knuckles were white as he gripped Lily's chart. Has she experienced syncope before? Syncope, fainting. Such a clinical word for the way my world stopped each time she fell. 3 times this year. I forced myself to meet his eyes. But never this bad. A young doctor appeared at Daniel's shoulder, beautiful in that polished way that made me acutely aware of my faded jeans and the coffee stain on my shirt. "Dr. Hayes, should I prep or 3? "Not yet, Rebecca." He didn't look away from Lily. "We need the echo first, full cardiac workup." Rebecca's gaze slid between us, sharp and calculating. I recognized that look. Possession, suspicion, the same combination I'd seen in Eleanor Hayes's eyes 7 years ago. They wheeled Lily away for tests, and I was left in a waiting room that smelled like fear and industrial disinfectant. Daniel disappeared with her, and I was grateful. I needed time to think, to prepare, to build back the walls that had crumbled the moment I'd heard his name. But he found me an hour later, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Black, no sugar," he said quietly, offering one. "Unless that's changed." Nothing about me had stayed the same since him, but I took it anyway. My hands shook. "She's stable," he said before I could ask. "But Emily?" He sat beside me, careful not to touch. "Her condition is more serious than you've been told. She needs surgery." "I know," the words scraped out. "I've known for a year, but the specialist in Tyler said she needed to be bigger, stronger, said to wait. The specialist in Tyler was wrong." His jaw tightened. "She needs intervention now, within days." I stared at my coffee, watching the cream I hadn't added swirl into patterns that looked like the future unraveling. "Emily, softer now. Is she?" He stopped, started again. "Her birthday. When is her birthday?" The coffee cup crumpled in my hands, hot liquid spilling over my fingers. I couldn't answer. Couldn't lie to those eyes that had once seen through every wall I'd built. "March 15th, I whispered. I watched him do the math, watched the color drain from his face. 7 years melted away, and we were back in his apartment, me holding a pregnancy test with shaking hands while his mother's voice echoed from the answering machine. I've withdrawn the tuition payment, Daniel. That girl is your past, your future is here. My God. He breathed the words like a prayer or a curse. She's mine. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. Rebecca's face filled the screen. A photo where she was pressed against his shoulder, smiling like she owned him. We need to talk, he said, declining the call. But first, I'm going to save our daughter. Our daughter. The words I'd never thought I'd hear hung between us like a bridge across 7 years of silence. The test results spread across Daniel's desk like accusations. He'd commanded a small office, away from prying eyes, and now sat across from me with Lily's medical history between us. 6 years of struggles laid bare in black and white. Tetralogy of Fallot with pulmonary stenosis. His finger traced the diagnosis. Every doctor who's seen her recommended surgery. Why did you wait? Money. The truth tasted bitter. Do you know what cardiac surgery costs without insurance? I've been saving, working 2 jobs, but it's never enough. His face went through a series of expressions. Anger, hurt, something that might have been shame. I would have, if I'd known. Would you? The question shot out before I could stop it. Or would Eleanor have buried us both? His phone buzzed again. This time he answered, his voice clipped. Not now, Rebecca. I'm with a patient. I caught her response, shrill through the speaker. A patient? That woman isn't... He hung up. I need to call my mother, I said. She's watching the neighbor's kids, but she'll want to know. Your mother? His eyes softened. How is Anna? Dead. I watched him flinch. Cancer, 4 years ago, right after Lily's diagnosis. Another stone in the wall between us. Another thing he'd missed. Emily, I'm sorry, I didn't... He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. There's so much I don't know. Whose fault is that? But the anger was hollow now, worn thin by years of carrying it. A knock interrupted us. The door opened without invitation, and my nightmare walked in wearing Chanel and 7 years of aged malice. Eleanor Hayes looked exactly the same. Platinum hair sculpted to perfection, diamonds catching the fluorescent lights, mouth carved into the same dismissive line I remembered. Daniel, Rebecca called. She's concerned about... Eleanor's gaze found me and sharpened to a blade. You, Mother. Daniel stood, positioning himself between us. This isn't the time. On the contrary. She stepped around him, eyes raking over me like she was cataloging my failures. Miss Carter, still causing problems, I see. Mrs. Hayes. I didn't stand, couldn't. My daughter is sick. Your daughter... She smiled, cold as February. Yes, I've been informed of your... claim. It's not a claim, Daniel said quietly. Lily is mine. The blood type match alone. Blood types can be coincidental. Eleanor's voice cut like glass. We'll need proper testing, of course. Chain of custody, legal verification. I watched Daniel's face change, watched him see his mother clearly for maybe the first time. She's 6 years old, he said slowly. She's lying in a hospital bed with a heart that could stop at any moment. And you're worried about paperwork? I'm worried about protecting this family. Eleanor's mask slipped, showing something ugly underneath, just as I did 7 years ago. The admission hung in the air like a confession. Daniel went very still. What did you do? Eleanor straightened her pearls, a tell I remembered from the handful of family dinners I'd endured. I protected your future. That girl would have ruined everything we'd built. That girl has a name. My voice surprised me, steady when everything inside was shaking. And she's been raising your granddaughter alone while you played God with our lives. Granddaughter? Eleanor laughed, brittle as old bones. We'll see about that. She swept out, leaving cologne and cruelty in her wake. Daniel sank into his chair, suddenly looking older than his 36 years. I didn't know, he said quietly. About what she did? I thought you left because... He stopped. It doesn't matter what I thought. I left because she paid me to. The words I'd never said aloud fell between us like stones. $30,000 and a promise to destroy my scholarship if I didn't disappear. I was 22 and pregnant and terrified, and she knew exactly which buttons to push. His hands clenched on the desk. She paid you? I never cashed the check. I pulled out my phone, showed him the photo I'd kept all these years. That damned check, Eleanor's precise handwriting spelling out my worth. But I kept it to remind myself that some people's love comes with a price tag. Emily, I need to see Lily. I stood, exhaustion making me sway. Whatever else we need to discuss can wait until after she's safe. He led me through corridors that blurred together, past nurses who watched us with curious eyes. Rebecca appeared twice more, each time deflected by Daniel with increasing irritation. Lily looked so small in the hospital bed, dwarfed by machines and wires. I took her hand, careful of the IV, and felt her fingers curl around mine, even in sleep. "The surgery," I said without looking at him. "When?" "Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. He moved to the other side of her bed, and for a moment we stood like the family we'd never been. "I'll do it myself." "Is that allowed? Operating on your own?" I couldn't say daughter, not yet. She needs the best, that's me. No arrogance in it, just fact. I've done over 300 of these repairs. I won't let anyone else touch her. A nurse appeared with paperwork, consent forms, risk acknowledgements, words like complications and mortality rate that made my hands shake as I signed. "There's something else," the nurse said hesitantly. "Dr. Hayes requested a genetic panel, priority processing, but the results..." She frowned at her tablet. "They're showing no biological relationship between Dr. Hayes and the patient." The world tilted again. Daniel grabbed the tablet, scanned the results. "This is wrong. Run it again." We did. Twice. The nurse looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, but the lab confirmed." "The lab is wrong." His voice had gone dangerously quiet. "I want the samples recollected. New technician, document every step." But I saw the doubt creeping in, saw him look at Lily with new eyes, and felt another piece of my heart break. "You believe her?" I stared at Daniel across Lily's bed, watching doubt poison his features. "After everything, you believe I'm lying?" "I don't know what to believe." He held the tablet like it might change its mind. The science is wrong." But even as I said it, I felt the ground shifting. Who had handled those samples? Who had processed them? A soft knock interrupted. Maria, the night nurse who'd been kind to me, peered around the door. "Mrs. Carter, could I speak with you?" I followed her into the hallway, Daniel's suspicious gaze burning my back. Maria glanced around nervously. "I shouldn't say anything, but..." "I was here when they collected the samples. Dr. Thornton, Rebecca, she insisted on handling them personally. Said it was high priority." My blood chilled. "She's not a lab tech." "No, but she has access. And she and Dr. Hayes?" Maria trailed off meaningfully. "Just be careful. That woman has plans, and you're in the way." She hurried off before I could ask more. I returned to find Daniel on his phone, voice low and angry. "I don't care what the lab says. I want an independent facility. Chain of custody documentation." He saw me and ended the call. "We'll get to the bottom of this." "Will we?" Exhaustion made me reckless. "Or will you let them convince you I'm just another gold digger trying to trap the great Dr. Hayes?" "That's not..." He stopped. "I know you, Emily. You wouldn't lie about this. You knew me, past tense." I sank into the chair beside Lily's bed. Just like I knew the man who promised we'd face everything together. But that man let his mother run me out of town while he was in surgery, saving other people's children. "I looked for you." The words came out raw. "For months. Your apartment was empty. Your phone disconnected. Even your mother wouldn't tell me where you'd gone." Because Eleanor threatened to destroy her too. Bad credit mysteriously appearing. Mortgage problems. Amazing what money can do. I stroked Lily's hair, kneading the anchor. "We ran to Texas and started over. New names on everything. Cash only. Like criminals, except our only crime was loving you." His phone buzzed. A message that made his face darken. "What now?" I asked. "My mother. She's called a family meeting. Tomorrow, after the surgery." He showed me the text. "With lawyers." Of course she had. Eleanor Hayes never met a problem she couldn't solve with litigation. "She can't take her," I said, but fear made it a question. "No court would." He stopped, looked at the falsified test results. "We need real proof. And we need to know who's helping her." As if summoned, Rebecca appeared in the doorway, all concern and pressed scrubs. "Daniel, I heard about the mix-up with the tests. How awful. Should I arrange for new ones?" I watched her performance, saw Daniel's eyes narrow as he finally started to see the truth. "That won't be necessary," he said carefully. "I'll handle it personally." Her smile flickered, just for a second, but it was enough. Dawn came like judgment. I hadn't slept, hadn't left Lily's side except to sign more papers and drink coffee that tasted like liquid fear. Daniel had disappeared around 3 a.m. to prep for surgery, leaving me alone with my daughter and the weight of what came next. "Mama?" Lily's voice, whisper thin, pulled me from my spiral. "Hey, baby girl." I smoothed her hair, careful of the monitors. "How do you feel?" "Scared." Her honesty broke me. At 6, she understood more than I'd wanted her to. "Is the doctor nice?" "The nicest. Not a lie. Whatever else Daniel was, he'd been gentle with her." And he's the best heart doctor in Texas, maybe in the world. He looks like the picture. She yawned. The one in your jewelry box. My heart stopped. What picture, sweetheart? The man at the beach, with a pretty smile. Her eyes fluttered closed again. Is he my daddy? Before I could answer, before I could figure out how to answer, they came to take her. A parade of medical professionals in surgical caps and kind eyes. Daniel at the center like a general preparing for war. He stopped beside me. 4 hours, maybe less if everything goes smoothly. His hand covered mine, brief but warm. I'll take care of her, Em. I promise. Em. He hadn't called me that since the morning I'd left, when he'd kissed me goodbye at his apartment door, neither of us knowing it was the last time. I know. And I did. Whatever else lay broken between us, I trusted him with her life. They wheeled her away, and I collapsed in the surgical waiting room. Other families clustered in corners, each carrying their own weight of worry. I envied them their ignorance of my particular grief. 2 hours in, Maria found me. There's someone here to see you, she said carefully. Says he's Dr. Hayes's father. Marcus Hayes stood in the hallway like a man approaching a gallows. Where Eleanor was sharp edges and cold perfection, he was softer, worn down by years of choosing peace over principle. Emily. He took my hands, surprising me. I'm sorry. For all of it. Mr. Hayes. Marcus, please. I need you to know that I didn't agree with what Eleanor did, but I was weak. I let her convince me it was for the best. He pulled out an envelope, hands shaking. This might help. Inside were photographs, Daniel and me at his graduation, my acceptance letter to Columbia's graduate program, the one that had mysteriously lost its funding, and a recording device. She kept records of everything, Marcus said quietly. Insurance, she called it. This is from the day she visited you. The threats, the bribe, all of it. Why now? My voice came out strangled. Because I'm tired of watching my son live half a life. Because that little girl deserves better than our family's poison. He squeezed my shoulder. And because some sins need confession. As he left, my phone buzzed. Daniel. She's doing beautifully. 2 more hours. I clutched the envelope and let myself hope. The conference room smelled like leather and old money. Eleanor sat at the head of the table like a queen holding court, flanked by 2 lawyers who looked like they ate smaller lawyers for breakfast. Rebecca perched to her right, tablet in hand, playing the perfect protege. I sat alone on my side, still wearing yesterday's clothes, running on coffee and 2 hours of stolen sleep in the surgical waiting room. But Lily was alive, breathing on her own, her repaired heart beating steady and strong. Nothing else mattered. Now then, Eleanor began, sliding a folder across the table. Let's discuss terms. Daniel entered before I could respond, still in scrubs, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. He took the chair beside me without hesitation. Mother, what is this? Protecting our interests. She didn't look at him. Miss Carter has made certain claims. Our daughter nearly died yesterday. His voice could have frozen hell. And your priority is paperwork? The DNA results, Rebecca started, are fabricated. I placed Marcus's envelope on the table. But you already knew that, didn't you, Rebecca? When you personally handled the samples? When you made sure the results showed what Eleanor wanted? Rebecca's face went white. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I pulled out the recording device. Would you like to hear Eleanor's greatest hits? The threats she made 7 years ago? Or should we skip to the part where she discusses bribing a lab tech last week? Eleanor's mask finally cracked. Where did you get that? Does it matter? Daniel took the device, his face darkening as he listened. His mother's voice, crystal clear, detailing exactly how she'd destroyed our lives. This proves nothing, Eleanor said, but her voice had lost its edge. Ancient history. No. Daniel stood slowly. This proves everything. It proves you're so consumed with control that you'd falsify medical records. It proves you drove away the woman I loved and kept my daughter from me. It proves Rebecca is complicit in fraud that could cost her medical license. Daniel, please. Rebecca reached for him. You're done here. He didn't even look at her. I'll be filing reports with the medical board and the police. I suggest you get a lawyer. She fled. Eleanor's lawyers exchanged nervous glances. As for you, Daniel turned to his mother, you're going to sign whatever documents Emily's lawyer prepares. You're going to stay away from our daughter. And if you ever try to interfere in our lives again, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what Eleanor Hayes is beneath the pearls and charity galas. You wouldn't dare. Try me. He pulled out his phone, showed her a screen. I've already sent copies of everything to Dad. He's with his lawyer now, discussing divorce terms. Turns out fraud and bribery are grounds for a forensic accounting of all family assets, including the foundation. Eleanor aged 10 years in 10 seconds. Without another word, she gathered her things and left, her lawyers scrambling after her. Daniel sank back into his chair. I'm sorry. For all of it. For not seeing. For not protecting you. It's not your fault. Yes, it is. He turned to me fully. I should have fought harder, looked longer. I should have known you wouldn't just disappear. 6 months later, I stood in the same hospital, but everything had changed. Lily raced down the corridor, her sneakers squeaking on the polished floor, running because she could now, because her heart was strong and whole. She launched herself at Daniel, who caught her easily, spinning her around until she shrieked with laughter. Daddy, look! She showed him the picture she'd drawn in art therapy, a house with 3 stick figures standing in front, holding hands. That's us. Us. Such a simple word for such a complicated journey. The custody papers had been signed within days of Eleanor's retreat. Daniel's name on Lily's birth certificate. Joint custody that we'd slowly shaped into something more like a family. Dinners that stretched longer. Bedtime stories with both of us perched on her bed. Mornings that found him at my kitchen table, teaching Lily to play chess while I made pancakes. Nice picture, princess. He set her down gently. Why don't you show Nurse Maria? I bet she'd love to see it. Lily scampered off, and we were alone in the corridor where everything had started. The job offer? He said quietly. Have you decided? Columbia had reinstated my acceptance, 7 years late but with full funding. A chance to finish what I'd started, to become the researcher I'd once dreamed of being. The catch? It meant New York. I don't know. I watched Lily charm the nurses, her laughter echoing off the walls. It's not just my decision anymore. No, he agreed. It's ours. Ours. Another simple word that held universes. I've been thinking, he continued. Mount Sinai has been courting me. Cardiac surgery department head, better hours, and it's 20 minutes from Columbia. I turned to stare at him. You'd leave Texas? Your practice? I'd leave anything for her. He paused. For both of you. The words hung between us, weighted with possibility. We'd been dancing around this for months. The feelings that had never quite died, the family we were building on the ashes of what we'd lost. Daniel, I know we can't just pick up where we left off. He stepped closer, but maybe we could start somewhere new. Take it slow, see what happens when nobody's pulling the strings. My phone buzzed. Marcus, sending another photo of the house he was renovating in Austin, far from Eleanor's influence. He'd become an unexpected grandfather, spoiling Lily with books and puzzles and quiet affection. What about Rebecca? I asked. The investigation? Medical license suspended pending review. Eleanor's paying her legal fees to keep her quiet. His smile was grim. They deserve each other. Lily ran back, clutching a lollipop from the nurse's station. Mama, can we get ice cream? Daddy promised if I was good for my checkup. Did he now? I raised an eyebrow at Daniel, who shrugged unrepentantly. Mint chocolate chip, they said in unison, then grinned at each other. My heart, unlike my daughter's, had never needed surgical repair. But watching them together, I felt it healing all the same. We walked out of the hospital together, Lily between us, her hands in ours. Not the family we'd planned, but the one we'd fought for, the one we'd earned. That envelope had arrived 3 weeks ago. No return address, just photos from our college years and a note. The past has teeth, but the future has wings. I'd thrown it away. Whatever shadows lurked in Eleanor's past, whatever secrets she'd buried, they could stay buried. We had our own future to build.